subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Hurley Bell and run away before the battle is completely over. Anger burned in my heart. This vasto lord named Shendu in front of me is even more despicable than Berrigan Lisenbairn. But what I have to admit is that this guy has indeed grasped her most fatal flaw. Death is not scary. Terrible, yes. Even the existence that I cherish cannot be guarded. Hurley Bell slowly closed his eyes, completely shattering the last unwillingness. Great Majesty Shendu, Taya Hurley Bell surrenders to you. Under the threat of Apache and other imaginary beings, Hurley Bell let go of his pride and chose to surrender to Shendu. Since then, Shendu has finally conquered the first real high-end combat power. Vasto Lord, female Wang Su, Tia Hurley Bell. The fourth step towards the ultimate has been completed. Template progress increased by 25% to 30%. Unlock Demon Magic. Current abilities: Dragon Body, Fire Magic, Demon Magic, Dragon Charm, Pig Charm, Cow Charm. Ryatsu, First Class Lingwei. To be evolved, another unexpected situation occurred. After conquering Hurley Bell, Shendu did not unlock new spells, but mastered the magic knowledge accumulated by the Lord for countless years. One of the most important parts of a demon wisdom. These things Shendu was immersed in countless knowledge of demonic magic, and there was a rare, intoxicated expression on his ferocious and cruel face. Unexpectedly useful, Aizen was able to research Jayaku and become one of the few transcendents in the three realms, not just because of his own bottomless potential. More comes from its extraordinary wisdom and vision. As early as its childhood, its wisdom and vision have surpassed most Shinigami. The practice of Ryatsu, the study of Kid, the research and development of Hijaya. In this world, science is the primary productive force, and demon magic has the same effect as it. Shendu's thoughts wandered in the ocean of magic knowledge, digesting the gains this time. There was a trace of doubt in Hurley Bell's eyes, not knowing what the monster in front of him meant. Are you ready to regret it? Is it because I promised too slowly, which caused this guy's dissatisfaction? For a moment, countless thoughts emerged in her heart. However, on the surface, Hurley Bell still looks as cold as water, and even his movements haven't changed a bit. Duplicity, probably that's what it means. A long time, Shendu came back to his senses, and countless strange and complicated lines were reflected in the blood-red pupils, like some kind of text, but also like some kind of symbols. He looked at Hurley Bell. His proud figure was wrapped in tight white bones. His short yellow hair was hanging down, his emerald green eyes were half covered, and his brown skin was looming, highlighting his alluring posture. Only the drooping left arm and the slightly sunken sternum made this beauty a little more incomplete. Vasto Lord, Shendu's muttered magnetic magic sound echoed in Hurley Bell's ears. For some reason, the instinctive perception was frantically sounding the alarm for her. The existence that I just chose to be loyal to is definitely thinking about something extremely dangerous. Waiting for Hurley Bell to respond, Shendu approached suddenly, stretched out his sharp claws to pinch Hurley Bell's delicate chin, and lifted it slightly. The two looked closely at each other. The scalding exhalation filled Hurley Bell's nasal cavity, making her inexplicably flustered. What is this guy trying to do? Shendu stared at the mask covering half of Hurley Bell's cheek and whispered with devilish temptation, "Hurley Bell, do you want to break this ugly and hideous mask?" Chapter 23. This is the power of the devil. The fisherman is here. Hurley Bell felt the hot air blowing on his face, turned his head away subconsciously, and said in a low voice, "In no mood, if you kill to become stronger, then at the end of your life there will only be killing." This is her life credo. Shendu's eyes paused, and he suddenly recalled the character of his subordinate of Vasto Lord. Inside the seemingly cold exterior, there is a heart that is kinder than any Minos Grande. Vasto Lord did not stop evolving. It just can no longer evolve by devouring other Minos Grande. Existences like Shendu and Hurley Bell can still become stronger through killing. However, relatively speaking, the effect appears to be extremely cost-effective. Obviously, Hurley Bell also knows this, and knows even more what it means for Vasto Lord to play Arrancar. She is unwilling to embark on a path that is contrary to her creed. Kill. Shindu laughed, and the magnetic magic sound echoed in the open area. No, no, no. If you want to finish Arrancar, and do it by killing, starting for 100 years, or even longer, I won't let you do such a cost-effective behavior. Hurley Bell was surprised and stared straight at him in bewilderment, but happened to meet Shindu's aggressive eyes. Ever since, she subconsciously turned her head away again. If it's not through killing, then what else is there to finish Arrancar? A mysterious smile appeared on Shindu's dragon face. Technology from the kingdom of demons. Like this, as soon as Hurley Bell finished speaking, before Hurley Bell could turn his head to look back, he felt a scorching heat on his chest, accompanied by a hint of unexpected coldness. She turned her head in horror, her eyes lowered, and she happened to see a dark green sharp claw, which happened to be pressing on her chest. Although there's a separation of bones, but still can clearly feel that different kind of touch. But before she opened her mouth to refuse, new warmth emerged from the sharp claws, as if the sun was shining on the body. Hurley Bell seemed to be immersed in it physically and mentally, and his expression was intoxicated. If she pays attention to Shindu at this time, she will find that Shindu has lost his domineering temperament at this time, like a magic stick, chanting magic spells in his mouth. No one can understand the content of the spell, even if it's Urahara Kisuk. No, it's the same even if the Soul King comes. This is not the language system of this world, but the language inherited from the devil. In addition to mastering the unique demonic magic, the Holy Lord also has the Black Magic Encyclopedia belonging to Terra. At the same time, his long and infinite lifespan also allowed him to master the wisdom of outstanding people from all ages. The Lord is not only a noble dragon, but also the only demon wizard, advocating wisdom. He will not easily underestimate the outstanding people of any era. What Shindu is currently using is just the most commonly used healing magic. The effect is quite obvious, even comparable to the high-speed regeneration of Minos Grande. In just a few seconds, Holy Bell's broken sternum was back to normal. It was another attempt, and its left arm, which was hanging limp, also returned to its original shape, and even Ryatsu recovered a little. An experience I've never had before. Hurley Bell looked at his hands in amazement, totally different from Minos Grande's power. A Shinigami ability? Or the exterminator? Shindu shook his head and denied. I don't like to say what I said a second time. This is the power of the devil. Now that the magic works on Hurley Bell, his next plan can be implemented. Although the magic in the mind does not record how to help Minos Grande carry out Arrancar, it does not prevent Shindu from conducting experiments. He looked in the direction of Shuya Palace, and the gaze in his blood-red pupils became deeper and deeper. Perhaps it's time to find a suitable assistant. The battle between Hurley Bell and Shindu cannot be hidden from the other powerful Minos Grande. But most of them are not very interested in it. Battles between Vasto Lords are not very rare. They will always be encountered once or twice in the past few decades. Time is often the most overlooked aspect in Hueco Mundo. After all, the unchanging scenery has lasted for 10,000 years. But not all existences are not interested in this battle. Sayo Laporo mingled with the conquest team, temporarily suppressing the shock in his heart, and still maintained an elegant posture on the surface. Shindu and Hurley Bell? How did these two guys meet? Countless thoughts swirled and intertwined in his mind. Ryatsu skyrockets and suddenly disappears. Maybe they've lost both. If you don't seize this opportunity, you will regret it. A look of determination appeared on Sailaporo's face. Shindu was the living material he was thinking about. If Shindu can be the main one to carry out an unreasonable conception notification experiment, then his research progress will definitely reach perfection. After thinking of this, he immediately inserted his hand into his abdominal cavity and abruptly broke and pulled out the ribs. Abalom Alita looked at this scene, feeling a little numb. Although Sue's nature is cruel and tyrannical, It is treating the enemy, not himself. This scene really made him a little uncomfortable. Just now, there was a fight between Shendu and Tia Hurley-Bell. After Sailaporo pulled out his ribs, he regained his previous graceful posture. That Shendu guy is just a newly evolved Vasto Lord, and Hurley-Bell needs no explanation for me. The unreserved battle between them will inevitably fall into unstoppable weakness. It can help us find traces of Shendu. Abraham Alita was slightly startled, subconsciously looking at the ribs in Sailaporo's hand. At this time, the ribs are emitting a faint light, pointing in an unknown direction. Shendu took care of Hurley-Bell, and the remaining 3 mana guys naturally had no difficulty. But Mira seemed very unconvinced because of the fight with Cortez. With a fiery personality, she doesn't think she is lost. However, facing Myra's challenge request again, Cortez just snorted disdainfully. The loser is not worthy to fight me again. Responding like this immediately caused Mira, the lion, to go berserk. If it hadn't been for Hurley-Bell to stop him, I'm afraid he would have sent Cero directly to Cortez. But Shendu didn't care about it all. Hurley-Bell is his main target, and the other 3 are just freebies. While Shendu was waiting for Hurley-Bell to recover, a huge number of Ryatsu came from afar. The grains of sand are trembling, jumping, and resonating until they form a shocking roar, echoing in the barrenness. End of sight. Another black line came rushing in like a sea tide. Hurley-Bell and the others immediately stood there in a daze, looking away, losing focus. What a familiar scene. Chapter 24, A Small Meeting Gift. Please accept that Cortez raised his horse's hooves and scratched his muscular head. This scene, it always feels like I've seen it somewhere. Oops, my head is so itchy. Don't you want to grow your brain? Shendu erected his body with a slight bow, and the abundance of strength caused bursts of crisp sounds like firecrackers. He noticed the familiar Ryatsu from the virtual group that came from him. The probing circuit had a firm memory of the sickening smell. That was the first Vasto Lord that Shendu encountered in Hueco Mundo. Sailaporo Grands send out such a large-scale virtual group. Hurley-Bell stood beside Shendu and explained in a calm tone, "Besides you, there should be only Berrigan Lusenbairn of the Void Palace, a guy who seems to be magnanimous, but actually has a small gut. Berrigan and Hurley-Bell have crossed paths more than once. As the king of Hueco Mundo, Berrigan also invited Hurley-Bell to be his subordinate and fought for it. But sadly, he failed. Since then, Berrigan has continued to send out virtual groups to attack Hurley-Bell. He can't abandon his subordinates, let alone be as unscrupulous as Shendu. You know, the virtual group sent by Shendu, except for Cortez and Santos, was almost killed by Hurley-Bell. Only a few Ajuchas and a couple of lucky Jillians remained. Facing Vasto Lord, all they can do is wait for the slaughter. Sailaporo Grands. Hurley-Bell's expression has not changed from the beginning to the end. I sensed his Ryatsu. This guy is also hiding in the Void Pack. Shendu noticed that Hurley-Bell's palm holding the giant bone sword was a little bit harder. Obviously, she is still a bit worried about dealing with Sailaporo, who is also Vasto Lord in the current state. What would you do in the face of an old friend? He said in a deep voice next to Hurley-Bell's ear. Hurley-Bell, whose long eyelashes drooped slightly, responded with a firm voice clang. Fight for you, my lord. Obvious. She wasn't Grimjow's unruly brutishness. Shendu is quite satisfied with this obedient and easy-to-use subordinate. Well, nice attitude. He raised his right hand, facing the attacking Shuchuan, and released a dazzling red light from the palm of his hand. However, as you are now, you should be ready to enjoy a big show. Hurley-Bell's state is not enough to fight against Shuchuan and Sailaporo head-on. But Shendu is different. With the power of the dragon charm and the power of the cow charm, he is not afraid of any protracted battle at all. Sailaporo, who was hidden far away in the virtual group, suddenly had a heart palpitation and subconsciously looked into the distance. In the direction where Shendu Ryatsu appeared, a large number of high-density spiritual particles were gathering, and the scorching breath diffused from a distance. This guy, Sailaporo, gritted his teeth without any hesitation and didn't even notify Abalamalita beside him, and directly started the spinning wheel and fled from the spot. By the time Aburama and others reacted, Shindu's attack had already been prepared. The magma formed a strange symbol and cast it on the palm, and a huge amount of spiritual particles gathered around its arm, even forming a materialized golden-red Ryatsu. Fire Demon Qi plus Dragon Explosion plus Demon Magic plus Cero. Uncapped Ultimate Power. Hurley Bell, standing beside Shendu, can feel it most clearly. Even with her steel-skin defense level, under the protection of white bones, there were still bursts of burning pain on her brown skin. The unconcealable instinctive fear spread in her heart. Hurley Bell seems to have returned to the period when she was still a weak child, with enemies on all sides, and fear remained in her heart all the time. She looked at Shendu. The original red light in the palm of its sharp claws had gradually been replaced by dazzling gold. Under the blessing of multiple forces, this Cero has undergone earth-shaking changes. Hurley Bell asked himself that if Shendu had used this type of attack in the previous battle, then she might not have left even shards. Sailaporo, last time you left without saying goodbye, it made me very sad. Shindu's magnetic magic sound echoed on the scorched desert, even overwhelming the roars of those ajuches. This is a meeting ceremony. Please accept it. The voice fell. The world changes color. A beam of explosive light with a diameter of 1 kilometer exploded in front of Shendu. The terrifying high temperature instantly melted and evaporated the devastated desert, and everything in front of it was swallowed by the beam of light. Aburama stared in astonishment at the endless beams of light flying towards him, and the fear of suffocation engulfed his heart. He opened his mouth to say something, but he couldn't make any sound, until an attack capable of destroying everything descended on the Void Group. Boom! Another mushroom cloud exploded in Hueco Mundo. Billowing smoke and dust swept towards the sky, covering the moonlight and burying countless stars at the same time. A gust of wind whizzed out of it and rushed towards all directions. Cortez and others standing behind Shendu were almost unable to stand still in this sudden storm. Hurley Bell stood by Shindu's side. Her shock was hard to hide in her beautiful green eyes, and even her mouth, which was covered by the mask, was slightly opened, no longer the calm posture it was at first. Shindu's attack was far more terrifying than she imagined. And at the edge of the mushroom cloud, Sailaporo is completely devoid of elegance. His whole body was filled with scorched black, and his short pink hair showed a burning state again. Even if he sensed Shindu's attack immediately, he still couldn't escape the range of the attack. In other words, the power of this berserk version of Cero far exceeded his expectations. Why Sailaporo was regenerating at a high speed in the dust and smoke, his body trembling with anger. Could it be that the previous battle was fake? Damn God! Shendu, who should have fallen into a weak state due to the battle with Hurley Bell, not only did not intend to exhaust himself at all, but was directly ruthless by the attacking Shuchuan. Unprecedented, huge explosion. Even until now, Sailaporo still felt sharp pain in his ear canal. The aftermath of the mushroom cloud pierced his eardrums. When the dust dissipated and he looked back, Aburama and Minos Grande, who had come together, had not even the slightest bit of ashes left. Not far ahead of Sailaporo, a huge bottomless canyon stretches across the desert, and scorching blackness spreads within it until the end of sight. Chapter 25, let's start a new show. The power of the berserk version of Cero is somewhat beyond expectations. The Ajucha's virtual group that attacked did not even leave a wreckage behind. Everywhere you look, it's scorched black. The canyon is deep and deep, as if a huge eye is looking at itself, bringing horror like an abyss. The dust is still sweeping, forming a series of mournful cries, spreading a long distance in Hueco Mundo. Looking at his masterpiece, Shendu shook his head, not dissatisfied with this power. It's that the power is so amazing that it is a bit difficult to control. The blessing of demon magic also requires quite a long time of preparation and energy accumulation. It is also easier to use to clean up miscellaneous soldiers like just now. However, any existence like Sailaporo can't hit at all, and no matter how powerful it is, it's impossible to talk about it. There are pros and cons. Shendu pondered. Compared with spells, demonic magic needs more research and development. Hurley Bell stood there, looking at the canyon ahead with heavy eyes. A drop of cold sweat slipped from his smooth forehead. This time, she really felt the coming of death. Even if the target of this berserk Cero is not her. The dust was constantly swept away by the storm, and on the opposite side of the canyon, a figure was also reflected in the eyes of everyone. Saolaporo. Shendu brushed aside distracting thoughts, grinned, revealing dense, sharp teeth. I was thinking of finding you. Saolaporo also noticed the existence of Shendu, and the eyes of the two happened to meet in the air. No hesitation. Facing such a terrifying Shendu, Saolaporo immediately started to spin and fled in the direction he came from. He has none of the dignity that a Vasto lord should have. At least Holy Bell is not afraid of fighting when facing Shendu, even if the fate of the battle may be death. Shendu also performed ring rotation together. The dark green dragon body disappeared from the spot, and the buzzing sound trembled in the air. Hurley Bell hesitated for a moment, but followed immediately. Cortez and others, on the other hand, could only stare wide-eyed at such a speed of rotation, unable to follow at all. Saolaporo burst into the fastest speed of his life. Every time he used the revolving ring, he jumped a long distance in the barren desert. But no matter how hard he tried, Shindu's Ryatsu behind him was getting closer and closer, until the demon's magnetic magic sound echoed in his ears. My partner, what are you running for? The creepy aura has completely enveloped Saolaporo. Whether it is the detection circuit or the Ryatsu perception, it is all locked on Saolaporo's Ryatsu. Shendu threw a flame bomb casually, and it exploded at Saolaporo's feet, and a charred black pit suddenly appeared. Since you left without saying goodbye last time, I've been thinking about you every day and night. Saolaporo flickered, and the spinning speed, which had been squeezed to the limit, skyrocketed again. He doesn't have the slightest idea of fighting now. When facing a monster like Shendu, any head-on battle is an act of flooding the brain. As the most intelligent researcher in the entire Hueco Mundo, how could he do such an ignorant thing? Why do you shy away from me so much? Shendu fired another Cero, which directly cut off Saolaporo's path. Boom! He squatted with both legs, and the power belonging to the cow charm exploded again. Under the terrifying shock force, the sand surface suddenly collapsed into a huge, deep pit. The speed far exceeding the ring rotation is manifested in Shendu. By the time Saolaporo reacted, the ferocious face was less than 10 meters away from him. Damn it, he cursed in a low voice, just as he was about to squeeze his potential again. A dark green claw pressed directly on the back of his head. Giant power strikes. Saolaporo staggered immediately, and the whole body was directly pushed down to the ground without any image, and a large amount of white sand poured into his eyes, nose, and mouth. Facing this kind of capricious guy, Shendu will not show mercy. After taking a hard gulp of sand, he lifted Saolaporo from the sandy bottom and shook him in midair. Saolaporo, your previous actions. Shindu's tone became cold and tyrannical, like the whisper of death. Can I understand it as betrayal? Although from the beginning to the end, this guy didn't have any good ideas when he was in the so-called cooperation with him. But as soon as they reached a cooperation, they turned around and betrayed themselves at Berrigan, taking advantage of the situation and leading the virtual group to encircle and suppress themselves. Even Shendu can't help himself in this face-changing skill. How can a fool without a brain understand what art is? Even though Saolaporo's head was pinched by Shendu, he still didn't show any fear. It's just an inferior construction. How can a cooperation that I never thought of reach be called a betrayal? Shendu frowned, seeming to remember something. Just as he was about to speak, a large amount of black liquid gushed out from the part where his claws touched Saolaporo. Under disgust, Shendu threw Saolaporo out casually, rolling tens of meters away on the sand like a tattered doll. The black liquid left on his claws was evaporated by his anger, leaving nothing behind. Saolaporo climbed up from the sand facelessly. His stumbling steps looked a little weak. Even the simplest elegance can no longer be maintained. He pushed the glasses mask on the bridge of his nose. I want you to step into the design consciously. It's really not an easy plan. Even if you try your best to fight the battle, the chances of winning are still slim. This kind of thing is not funny at all. Shindu stood where he was, watching Sailaporo's performance calmly. For the most powerful researcher in Hueco Mundo, he also wants to see what kind of means he can come up with. Sailaporo, unsplit, is definitely the standout of the Hueco Mundo. Under the seemingly weak, hidden is the fatal danger of ultimate. Sailaporo did not disappoint Shindu. I saw him spread his 10 fingers, and with a strange smile, he directly inserted into his abdomen. Accompanied by the abrupt withdrawal of several ribs, 2 deep holes appeared in its abdominal cavity. A large amount of black liquid gushed out of it and piled up on the sand in front of him. Come. Sailaporo pulled the corners of his mouth to the sides. Let's start a new show. Under Shindu's blood-red gaze, the black liquid gradually solidified and changed, forming a dragon-like existence. Duplicate doll, Shindu. Chapter 26, Mirror Re-engraving. Complete abuse. On the dark green skin, weird lines are arranged in a row. The perfect body propped up the flowing muscle lines. The sharp claws flicked in the air and made a blasting sound, and the dragon tail full of bone blades swayed unconsciously behind him. Occasionally, it hits the sand surface heavily, forming a huge crater immediately. Its eyes were shining red, full of tyranny and cruelty, and there were sharp knife-like thorns on both sides of its head like a flame. In the bloody mouth, a snake-like tongue sticks out from time to time, moving between the dense, sharp teeth. Just standing there, even without any release of Ryatsu, is like a mountain oppressing on the heart, giving Sue a suffocating pain. Hurley Bell arrived just in time and quietly stood behind Shindu, carefully looking at the 2 identical existences in front of him. Having fought with Shindu, she knows Shindu's strength very well. Even if she tried her best, she still had no chance of winning. So what kind of strength will the existence in front of me, who is exactly the same as Shindu, show? She will not fight without Shindu's order. Accident. The hole in Sailaporo's abdominal cavity has recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Surprise? Since you gave me a meeting gift, how can I be stingy? He slowly narrated in a light and elegant voice. I was planning to make some aesthetic changes on the replica doll, but I found that your existence is too perfect. Any slight change will destroy this balance and make it ugly. Sailaporo's tone was calm, as if he was talking about an insignificant thing, but the enthusiasm in the depths of his eyes remained unabated. This copy doll has devoted all my efforts during this time. You can be so. The golden eyes fixedly stared at Shindu, narrating word by word. Don't let him down. Shindu looked at the replica doll that was exactly like himself, as if looking in a mirror, but he soon discovered something different. In the same blood-red eyes, the replica doll only has tyranny and cruelty, without any wisdom that it should have. Perhaps while replicating power, he suffered from Sailaporo's own limitations and was unable to shape wisdom for it. I hope you don't disappoint me. Shindu grinned, reflecting a wild smile. Come on, let me see if you have the qualifications. Boom. The 2 figures collided fiercely like a high-speed train, and an astonishing wave of air burst out in an instant, sweeping the white sand all over the sky. Ryatsu erupted at the center of the collision, forming a red halo that spread toward the sky. The dark green claws fit together and staggered, and the big tendons stood out on the skin. Under the heavy blow, the bones made a toothache crunching sound. At the moment of the collision, Shindu was obviously surprised. With the blessing of the power of the bull charm, the duplicate doll was able to match his brief burst. With Sailaporo's full research and development, can it reach such a level? The interest in Shindu's eyes became more and more intense, and he opened his mouth immediately, and hot waves of fire gushed out. However, the replica doll on the opposite side seemed to have expected it, and it also opened its mouth to breathe fire at the same time, and the impact of the fire wave that covered the sky and the sun directly bounced the 2 out. Shindu's hooves and feet stamped, carving deep marks on the sand. At the moment the flames erupted, the difference reappeared. The flames emanating from the replica dolls are spirit flames, and his flames are demon fires. A brief burst may be able to equalize its power, but once it stalemates, the replica doll will inevitably show signs of decline. A very advanced research creation. Shendu burst into a hearty laugh. I recognize your title as the strongest researcher of Hueco Mundo. Sailaporo grants. Facing the praise of the enemy, Sailaporo could not give birth to any joy. One's own works are clear to oneself. It seems that the two sides are even, but in fact the replica doll has lost. Shindu squatted with both legs, and his muscles were knotted layer by layer, showing the beauty of ultimate strength. Bang, the sand surface collapsed, leaving two deep marks. The explosion of pure physical strength drives a more violent speed. A series of afterimages appeared in the air, heading straight for the replica doll. The replica doll is fearless, and the ferocious and cruel face of the dragon shows the cruelty and tyranny of ultimate, and it also bursts out with the same power and goes straight to meet it. Like two heavy tanks, they release their firepower without restriction. Where the two dark green bodies passed, the ground collapsed, the white sand was scorched black, and it was a mess. Shindu swung his thick arms, and his sharp claws seemed to shoot down a tail of flames, bursting out at an even more terrifying speed. The replica doll was unbiased and attacked with the same posture. Both are like replicas in a mirror. It's just that one is above and one is below. Boom! It was difficult for the replica doll to resist the huge burst of force, and the dark green body fell directly from mid-air, as if a meteorite had slammed down on the desert and immediately stirred up sand waves 100 meters high. Unbiased, yes. The place where this guy fell happened to be where Shindu had left 3 marks when he erupted earlier. The devil's words sounded, and the magnetic magic sound immediately echoed in this empty and barren desert. The black chain burst out from the imprint and instantly wrapped around the neck and wrists of the replica doll. See, Sailaporo's eyes widened suddenly. His elegant expression was no longer the same, replaced by an unconcealable shock. Shinigami's kit, on Hurley Bell's seemingly calm and delicate face, there was also a bit of surprise. In previous battles, Shendu had never shown a similar ability. A scorching breath brewed and permeated the sky. Countless spirits gathered. On Shendu's dark green palm, gold and red are intertwined, outlining a spiral imprint. Boom! The berserk Cero beams descended from the sky, sweeping the materialized magma flames, distorting the surrounding air. The replica puppet exploded with all its power and instantly broke free from the chains that bound it. However, that beam of light had already descended on him, completely devouring the last trace of tyranny and cruelty. The dust and smoke dissipated, leaving only a bottomless black hole in place. Not even the slightest bit of wreckage remains. Chapter 27 belongs to the Devil's Contract, controls everything, do not know why. Looking at the scorched blackness, Shendu also felt a little uncomfortable. A guy who looks exactly like himself has been completely erased, which really makes Sue feel very substituting. He grinned, forcefully suppressing this dangerous thought. Sailaporo closed his eyes subconsciously the moment he saw the replica doll trapped by the black chain. Because at this moment, the result is already very clear. Even if the replica doll has the same strength of defense as Shendu, it is not enough to look at the berserk Cero who could destroy everything in an instant. Creation and reality. After all, there is a gap. Sailaporo tilted his head slightly, letting the scorching breath erode his lungs. Duplicating the doll not only consumed his material accumulation over the past 100 years, but also exhausted all his Ryatsu. Not to mention fighting Shendu. Even a Jillian is enough to eat him alive, chew and chew. This degree of weakness will even last for quite a long time. It is not an easy task to create a replica doll that is the same as Shendu. Sailaporo is desperate this time. For a scientist like him, the madness in his bones is often enough to swallow all his sanity. The only pity is, Sailaporo lost the bet this time. In his eyes, Shendu is a complete monster. Boom! The tall figure landed in front of Sailaporo, and the dragon tail unconsciously swept away the white sand behind him to make a clean area. Although Shindu's body shape has changed to a considerable extent after evolving to Vasto Lord, he is still a bit tall compared to other Vasto Lords of the same kind. The Devil's dragon body is not so easy to compress. I won't talk more nonsense. Standing in front of Sailaporo, Shindu can clearly sense the guy's state. The whole Su is like a piece of burnt dead wood. Even the lack of vitality is so unbelievable. It is estimated that it is difficult to start even the ring rotation. Blood-red eyes and golden pupils looked at each other. Shindu made no secret of his thoughts. If you don't want to be a stepping stone for Cortez's evolution. Before he finished speaking, Sailaporo immediately raised his hands with a sincere look and said respectfully, "Surrender. Whether it's Berrigan or the big guy, I don't have absolute loyalty to them, and I can choose to betray at any time." As a scientist and researcher, Sailaporo often acts conceited and contemptuous of everything that is lower than himself. However, when faced with an existence stronger than oneself, they are often respectful and even have a mentality of admiration. But until now, he has never disclosed any information about Aizen, which shows that this guy still has some fear and expectation for Aizen. It's really decisive. Shindu scratched his smooth chin, thoughtfully, but since you can betray Berrigan and Aizen Suk, then the future will definitely betray me. Don't tell me that you will never betray. You don't betray now just because you don't have enough chips. Sailaporo was shocked again, not because Shindu said what was in his mind, but because Shindu actually knew the name Aizen Suk. He widened his eyes and stared at Shindu with disbelief, trying to get a clue from the change in his expression. There's no need to act so embarrassing. Shindu waved his claws, pushing away the blowing wind and sand. It's not a big secret. There are different guys like Aizen in Soul Society, so Hueco Mundo will naturally have a corresponding existence. It's nothing more than that the emphasis of the two is not the same. Sailaporo smiled reluctantly under this explanation. No one knows the wisdom of Aizen better than he, nor the horror of the monster before him. In a short confrontation with Shindu, when they first met, Sailaporo got the physical data he wanted and then collected a considerable amount of combat data in the Minos Grande forest operation. Afterwards, through the self-made Minos Grande, placed in the Ajuchas group, part of the data after Shindu became stronger was collected again. In the end, on the ultimate Cero, he integrated all the data and made himself in contact with Shindu's body again during the chase phase. Thus, the manufacture of the replica doll is completed. Sailaporo didn't intend to turn the table with Shindu so soon, but the data collected told him. If it takes a while at night, there is really no chance at all. The speed at which this guy Shindu became stronger was suffocating. As for Aizen Suk, Sailaporo's eyes flickered when he thought of this person. From beginning to end, the being who achieved the state of Arankar by giving himself Shinigami abilities never showed his true side. Absolute unknown. In a sense, Shindu is very similar to Aizen Suk. In some respects, both present absolute unknowns. This is really a coincidence. Sailaporo hides his embarrassment with a smile. Originally, I was thinking of using Aizen's information in exchange for a little bit of preferential treatment. But now it seems completely impossible. Do not worry. Shindu seemed to see through this guy's thoughts, to prevent you from betraying again. I need to sign a contract with you. Under Sailaporo's astonished gaze, Shindu directly tore off a dark green epidermis on his left arm with sharp claws. Immediately, he stretched out his index finger to outline twisted devil characters on the surface, and a strange atmosphere spread from above. The power of the spell is blessed by Shindu on the skin contract. In just a few seconds, he completed the structure of this contract. Now you just need to complete the last step, and you're good to go. Write your name on the contract with blood. Shindu watched Sailaporo with blood-red eyes. Can I not write? Sailaporo had some speculations in his heart that the unknown means shown by Shindu were not weaker than Aizen at all. If you don't write, you die. Shindu will not keep a guy with him who may turn against him at any time. Okay, there's still some differences, Sailaporo muttered in his heart. At least Aizen won't be so brutal. He obediently signed his own life on the contract. At the moment of writing, Shendu clearly felt that he already had a certain control over Sailaporo. It's a pity that he hasn't unlocked the sheep charm yet. Otherwise, its soul will be controlled by him. Sailaporo's life and death will be in his mind. Hurley Bell watched the scene in front of him quietly. His green pupils flickered a little. The completely different treatment caused an elusive change in her mind. Chapter 28, The Power of the Soul. Overlord Clause at the moment of signing the contract. Sailaporo's complexion was also as dark as the bottom of a pot, so gloomy as to be ultimate. As a researcher-scientist, he still has some confidence in his technology. Originally thought that Shendu's so-called contract was just a restriction method similar to Kid. But after signing the contract completely, Sailaporo could clearly feel that his life seemed to be controlled by Shendu. Once I have something against my mind, I will inevitably suffer unimaginable torture and pain. Shendu put away the contract and tore open the space in the empty space in front of him, and the golden red illusory light bloomed from it, flowing like real magma. In Sailaporo's astonished eyes, a ferocious dragon's head protruded from it, and an astonishing roar erupted, and suddenly the air waves rolled and the strong wind howled. Shendu directly put the contract into the bloody mouth of the evil dragon and let it swallow it into its belly, completely sealing it up. The evil dragon completed the order and retracted into the different dimension space again. What is this? Curiosity overcame fear and loathing, Sailaporo asked subconsciously. As soon as these words came out, blood-red eyes immediately fell on him. There was a hint of success in Shendu's eyes, and he replied with a magnetic devil's voice. My dragon minion, an absolutely loyal existence. Much more reliable than a guy like you. Summoning the evil dragon is also a demonic spell that belongs exclusively to the Holy Lord. It's just that it may be influenced by himself. The dragon summoned by Shendu actually has a white bone mask on the head, and he smelled the void from the different dimension space. As for the strength of the summoned dragon, it is roughly equivalent to Cortez's level. Even worse, the dragon's minions don't have a qualified fighting consciousness. They only have the desire to destroy. For the current Shendu, this demon spell can only be regarded as icing on the cake, and it doesn't have much effect. After all, compared to opponents like Aizen and Jinryu Zai, the numbers are meaningless. Sailaporo was ridiculed by Shendu, but he didn't take it seriously. Speech or something is simply useless. I'm now starting to deny what I thought before. He pressed his chest with one hand, pointed to the sky with the other, and said seriously with a proud and elegant attitude, Your Majesty Shendu, your existence is far more mysterious than those of Berrigan and Aizen. It's like a new, unknown world, which reminds me of the field where only a very small number of existences have set foot. Hell! Shendu lowered his eyes and couldn't help recalling information about hell in his mind. It was an unknown territory that even the Spirit King hadn't mastered. The existences above the third-class spiritual power died. No matter whether the Soul Society is alive or Hueco Mundo, they can't decompose their spirits at all, so that such a strong person will fall into hell and become a part of it. Countless time has passed. How many strong men there will be in hell? This is also an unknown for Shendu. Afterwards, I will let you participate in related research. Shendu let out a scorching breath and evaporated the water vapor that pervaded again. Completely different from Shinigami and Hollow's system. The change of Sailaporo's attitude stems from his pursuit of the unknown. If a scientist like him lacks curiosity about the unknown, he will definitely stay where he is and make no progress. Sailaporo did it. Kuratsuchi Mayuri did it. Urahara Kisuk did it. It doesn't make any difference. The fifth step towards the ultimate has been completed. Template progress increased by 30% to 35%. Unlock the sheep charm. Current abilities: dragon body, fire magic, demon magic, dragon charm, pig charm, cow charm, sheep charm. Ryatsu. First class spiritual power, extreme. With the unlocking of the sheep charm, Shendu immediately felt the warm current gushing out from the depths of his soul, as if someone was massaging his soul. In a short period of time, the strength of the soul continued to increase, as if there was no upper limit. Not only that, but the perception from a soul ability is constantly reappearing in the depths of my mind. A spell that seems to be the most useless is actually an absolutely indispensable part. The importance of the soul is self-evident. In just a few seconds, Shendu could feel that his soul was at least several times stronger. It's even getting stronger. It's like going from a liquid to a solid. Shendu was immersed in it and stood there for a while, as if absent-minded. Cero took courage and shook his hand in front of him, just as he was about to test further. The eyes full of murderous intent directly locked on his heart. He followed his gaze and saw that Hurley Bell was looking at him calmly, as if looking at a dead object. The seemingly slender palm was already placed on the bone giant sword. As long as Cero makes a slight move, Hurley Bell will not hesitate at all. For this guy who used Minos Grande as a living material, she didn't have the slightest affection, but was full of disgust. If Shendu was not still here, Hurley Bell would have already left. Now that you have chosen your allegiance, do your best with all your heart. After all, Apache and the others are still with Cortez. Hurley Bell's thinking is much simpler than that of guys like Cero. Shendu recovered from the immersion. The explosive promotion of the soul has come to an end for the time being. The rest is just grinding the water and growing slowly bit by bit. Although this is the case, it is also compared with before. If compared with other existences, this growth is quite impressive. Least, in Shendu's view, he is many times stronger than a certain loan shark. If he was allowed to spend 1,000 years in a sleeping state, even the Spirit King in his heyday would be enough to break his wrists. With the sheep charm, the next plan will be smoother. Without hesitation, Shendu tore open the crack in the different dimensional space again and took out the contract from the dragon's mouth again. Then, in Cero's staring eyes, he directly added the clause about the soul. Ever since, Cero felt that even his own soul had fallen into Shendu's control. He looked stunned. After the contract is signed, can it be changed again? Shendu grinned and did not regret Cero at all, and said bluntly, "The devil's contract is like this." Chapter 29 is just the howling of a defeated dog. Not to mention the signed devil's contract. Even with a new contract, Shendu can still transfer Cero's name, even if that contract was extremely inhumane. Devil is not a synonym for goodness. No matter which world, it is the same. Cero gritted his teeth, but he dared not refute at all because his soul fell into Shendu's hands. Now that I am on a thief ship, it is difficult to go back on my word. If that guy from Aizen finds him, Cero recalled important things. Your Majesty Shendu must not abandon me. That rascal, halfway through, he swallowed the words again. Shendu glanced at Cero and saw that his face was full of fear, as if he was a little afraid of Aizen's methods. I agree with his purpose, but there is only one person who can sit on the throne above the zenith. Shendu flicked his lower paw, a little spark overflowed and exploded from the fingertips, bursting out with brilliant brilliance, instantly filled with high temperature. This is going to be an inevitable war. Hearing this, Cero is also completely relieved. Shendu's ambition, as early as the first meeting, he had already seen it very clearly. I thought unifying Hueco Mundo was its ultimate goal, but now it seems that whether it is Aizen or Shendu, the goals of both are infinitely stronger than Berrigan, who lives in the Void Knight Palace. The surrender of the Zeroth Espada, Cero undoubtedly made Shendu's subordinates grow stronger again. In terms of combat effectiveness alone, maybe this guy is not Hurley Bell's opponent. But when it comes to strategic significance, Cero is definitely the most precious necessity. As a most powerful researcher-scientist in Hueco Mundo, the knowledge stored in his mind is what Shendu urgently needs now. Regarding the transformation of Minos Grande, the construction of the Void Knight Palace, and the progress of Arrancar's research and development, and even the conception notification ability that is still in the development stage. None of which is enough knowledge to change the entire Hueco Mundo. I need a little time. Shendu looked into the distance, Cortez was waiting for Ryatsu, who was rushing towards his direction. Obviously, because of the delay for so long, this fanatic couldn't hold back his fighting spirit. As for worrying that Shendu will fall to the disadvantage and lose to Sailaporo, no kidding. Even if Hueco Mundo is destroyed, Cortez will never have this idea. Since his faith has become more fanatical, everything about Shendu has become more devout. In Cortez's eyes, Shendu is omnipotent and supreme. Faith will never collapse easily. Accompanied by the pounding of horseshoes, a burly figure rolled towards the flying dust. As for the other three, they were still panting heavily behind them, looking half dead. Regardless of strength or speed, Cortez completely crushed Apache and others. The two are not on the same level at all. Shendu believes that a pure guy like Cortez is very likely to evolve to the level of Vasto Lord. A subordinate like her is much easier to use than Sailaporo. Your Majesty, is the battle over? Cortez only had Shendu in his eyes. Is that guy, Sailaporo, dead? Hey, what an impolite words. Sailaporo was furious. Obviously, he was also Vasto Lord. Why didn't this guy treat him with any respect? You idiot, my uncle is Master Sailaporo, an absolutely perfect existence. Facing the roar, Cortez snorted disdainfully and snorted in front of Sailaporo. The howling of a defeated dog. Sailaporo froze in place immediately. His pupils were absent-minded, as if the whole animal had been petrified. Lost dog. Howling. Just when Sailaporo's anger was about to burn his sanity, Shendu's icy tone was like a whistling cold wind, instantly extinguishing the flame. I hate infighting. I hate quarrels even more. His dark green body blocked the line of sight of the two, and said with an undeniable meaning, prepare to return and start a new step in the forest of Minos Grande. At the same time, Shendu raised his head and looked in the direction of Shuya Palace. The lines on his skin were swimming like living creatures. War to Berrigan. Hurley Bell's eyes widened slightly, and her long eyelashes fluttered to express her inner unease. Berrigan had recruited her and declared war on her. Even if it was only a brief confrontation, Hurley Bell still felt the terrifying ability of Berrigan, enough to decay and age everything in the world, even attacks. The endless tide surged down, completely turning into nothingness in the black air without any trace. This scene has been deeply etched in Hurley Bell's memory. When Shendu said this, she subconsciously compared the strengths of Vice Admiral and Vice Admiral in her mind. Can't compare. Hurley Bell pushed the thought out of his mind. No matter Berrigan or Shendu, she is no match, so naturally there's no comparison. But I don't know why. In the subconscious of Hurley Bell, it seems that he does not want to see Shendu fail. The forest of Minos Grande. When Shendu returned here again, there was already a Shuchuan returning from the journey. Santos dutifully reported what had happened during this time. Other teams didn't have Cortez's luck, not to mention Vasto Lord. Even Ajuchas didn't encounter a few. Facing the huge virtual group, these Ajuchas couldn't even raise the slightest desire to fight, and even fled to other fields. Under the leadership of Su-kun, the scope of the Minos Grande forest is also constantly expanding. Ajuchas integrates his Ryatsu into various fields of Hueco Mundo to declare the ownership of the territory. So far, the development of Minos Grande forest has entered the right track. As for when the Void Swarm exploring outwards will encounter another Espada and the hidden Vasto Lord, this is beyond Shendu's control. All he wanted to do now was nothing more than two things. One is to declare war on Shuya Palace. What Berrigan has done will surely make him pay for it. Besides, Shendu is not a kind person. The second is to study Arrancar's method based on demonic magic and assisted by Sailaporo's knowledge. Whether it is Hurley Bell or Shendu, once Arrancar is achieved, their strength will rise to another level. This will be the way to go. Chapter 30, The Principle of Arrancarization and the Test Materials Delivered to the Door, some unknown corner of Hueco Mundo. The empty space was instantly torn apart by the surging Ryatsu, and a portal appeared from under the rock. The simple style sliding doors are opened towards the two sides, and the weird Ryatsu escapes behind the boundary transmitting door, like a poisonous mist, spreading to a range of several miles in an instant. A few seconds passed. A group of Shinigami in all-white uniforms filed out of it. In the quiet atmosphere, bursts of fierce cursing words suddenly broke out, and the voice was only indifferent and cruel, and no other emotions could be heard. Idiots, all idiots. Once this kind of operational efficiency is discovered by Shuchuan, the entire army will be wiped out. Do you want this captain to be buried with you? The speaker is wearing a white captain's haori on the outside and a black death suit on the inside. Zampakit belonging to Shinigami is inserted in the belt above the legs. The black and white gaps on the weird mask seem to be glued to the skin of the face. As the expression changes, the mask also wriggles accordingly. In the depths of the yellow pupils, there is no slight change in emotion. There is only cruel indifference and an endless thirst for knowledge. The exposed arms are even more abnormally pale, and traces of sewing can be vaguely seen on them. If Shendu is here, he must be able to recognize the identity of this person. The captain of the 12th Division and the second director of the Technology Development Bureau, the craziest scientist in the Soul Society. Kuratsuchi Mayuri. The frequency of this guy appearing in Hueco Mundo is no less than those responsible for combat exploring Hueco Mundo. Because of his various experimental research, often need a large number of imaginary. Higher specifications can only be carried out with Minos Grande as the standard. For this operation, we must find a qualified living material. Kuratsuchi Mayuri said indifferently, "The last thing is Jillian with self-awareness. The captain's experiment has entered a critical period. Once there is any mistake in this operation, all of you guys will be turned into meat bombs." Even for his team members, Kuratsuchi Mayuri still has no mercy. Compared to some Minos Grande, this guy is actually more cruel. With the support of various spiritual equipment provided by Kuratsuchi Mayuri, the members of the 12th Division carefully walked and explored in Hueco Mundo, looking for the traces of Minos Grande. For them, there are countless secrets in the Soul Society, not to mention the unknown Hueco Mundo. A little carelessness can lead to the destruction of the whole team. And if the task is not completed, the end will be very miserable. Once it is made into a meat bomb, then even the fate will be in the hands of others, and it may be sacrificed as a bomb at any time. At that time, even a complete corpse will not be left behind. In the direction that Kuratsuchi Mayuri and the others explored, a broad figure was soaring above the sky. The messy feathers falling from the wings from time to time fully explain the identity of this figure. Go to the forest of Minos Grande to deliver Santos the information about the expansion of the Void Swarm. The forest of Minos Grande. In the towering white stone tower, Shendu and Sailaporo are conducting their first collaborative research. As for the task of declaring war, it was naturally handed over to the fully recovered Hurley Bell to complete. As the vasto Lord Wang Su, who has dealt with Berrigan, Hurley Bell has enough understanding of Berrigan. A declaration of war would inevitably arouse Berrigan's wrath. If you go to another Minos Grande, I'm afraid it will be directly decayed into nothingness. The fundamental principle of Arankar, in fact, is that the standard Minos Grande has mastered the power of Shinigami. Once Sailaporo enters the research state, the whole Su appears to be extremely fanatical, even comparable to Shendu in terms of momentum. As for the abilities used by Aizen at my level at the time, I had no way of understanding. Even now, it's just a trivial clue. Shendu looked at the guy in front of him thoughtfully, flicking his claws unconsciously. Hot sparks exploded at his fingertips, and then went out instantly. So much so that the whole room was flickering. Sailaporo was angry, but he couldn't vent it. Not long ago, he subconsciously cursed Shendu because of this incident. Then the whole Su was directly swallowed by the flames, and the short pink hair that had just grown was directly burned to charcoal, with no elegance at all. This doesn't even involve the power of the contract. It's just a small punishment from Shendu. Next time, the arm will be twisted, and then it will be stuffed into your mouth. Shindu's calm words seemed to be joking. However, Saolaporo shuddered involuntarily, swallowing the words that came to his lips. Based on his understanding of Shendu during this time, he has no doubt that the other party can do such a thing. We want a way to reach Arankar. Saolaporo took a deep breath and continued. In addition to dissecting the different Minos Grandes, it also requires a fair amount of understanding of Shinigami. Shendu suddenly added a sentence in this paragraph. Actually, Arankarization is not as troublesome as you expected. It's nothing more than the discovery of potential so that it can be visualized on the outside. In the wisdom of the devil, there are many magics that can discover the potential. You can try it. To Shendu's surprise, Saolaporo refuted him in a rare way, and even seriously analyzed it with a serious face. Science is not as simple as it seems. The discovery of potential is by no means easy to achieve, and this kind of behavior often means paying a certain price. It could be life, or it could be soul. Shendu was silent, which was rightly said by Saolaporo. The devil's magic mostly pays attention to an equal exchange. The more potential one develops, the more astonishing the price one pays. Meticulous study of Shinigami and Minos Grande is a must. Saolaporo finalized the plan. Maybe we can start research from 2 parts. Body and soul. Before he finished speaking, Santos' sharp howling sound came from outside the White Tower. Your Majesty, important information. Shendu stepped out of the tower, just in time to see the excited expression on Santos' face. Countless feathers were shaken off and piled up at the door. Santos stretched out his wings and pointed to the southeast of the forest of Minos Grande and said loudly, "In this direction, there's a group of Shinigami wandering." Chapter 31 Wonderful Fate. Declare war on Shuya Palace. Shendu and Saolaporo looked at each other, and both saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Timely delivery of experimental materials to your door. In terms of luck, it is a yes if it is directly full. Shinigami often use Su and Minos Grande to conduct various experimental research. Among them, Aizen Kuratsuchi Mayuri and Urahara Kisuk are the most extreme. And when Shendu looked at it from a virtual perspective, he didn't think it was too much to experiment with Shinigami. It's nothing more than a change of identity between prey and hunter. This is like people eating a bear's paw. Could it be that a bear can't eat a man's hand? The same reason. The issue is the identities of these Shinigami, and whether there is a powerful existence among them, can meet the standard of experimental materials. As for whether he can beat it, it is completely out of Shendu's consideration. Except for Yamamoto Jinryu Zai and Aizen. Even if Unohana comes, he has to stay in Hueco Mundo. As for the other captains, Shendu didn't even care about them. Memorize those Shinigami images? Saolaporo asked curiously. However, Santos did not answer what he meant at all and looked straight at Shendu, as if waiting for his majesty to give orders. This appearance almost caused Saolaporo's mentality to burst again. Since he surrendered to Shendu and joined the forces of the Minos Grande forest, he no longer has the dignity that Vasto Lord should have. Not to mention Ajuchas, even Agilian. Without Shendu's order, he can't command. There are 2 reasons for this phenomenon. One is because of the demonic magic Shendu uses, which subtly changes his image in Shuchuan's mind. The second is the result of fanatical believers like Cortez vigorously promoting brainwashing. They spare no effort to publicize the power of Shendu, hoping to increase the number of believers. There is no doubt that Hueco Mundo admires the strong. When Shendu is the strongest in the forest of Minos Grande, naturally there will be no shortage of loyal followers. Seeing Shendu nodded, Santos immediately excitedly said, "All the dead Shendu wear special white costumes, which are completely different from the dead Shendu costumes provided in the information. With the exception of a guy with a weird mask and an ugly headdress. He is dressed in a white haori, lined with a black Shiba suit, and the Ryatsa breath of the whole person gives Sue an extremely disgusting feeling." In fact, when Santos said this, Shendu had a vague guess in his heart. "Oh right." Santos suddenly raised his wings and immediately raised several feathers and flew down. The number 12 is written on the back of that guy's haori. That's right, that crazy and pervert guy, the captain of the 12th Division. Kuratsuchi Mayuri. A smile appeared on Shindu's face. What a fate. Void Knight Palace. Hurley Bell stood on the white sand blown by the wind, looking calmly at the towering stone pillar in front of him. Your Majesty Shindu, His Majesty's order is to declare war on Berrigan in the most arrogant way. There was a hint of inexperience in the mature female voice. Hurley Bell, who was talking to himself, still couldn't let go when he called His Majesty Shindu. Although I don't know what is extreme arrogance, but if the entire Minos Grande in the Void Knight Palace can see it, it should be considered qualified. Hurley Bell casually pulled out the great white bone sword from behind, and immediately a series of stunning water splashes fluttered by his side. Holding a somewhat unfamiliar bone giant sword, Hurley Bell's pair of emerald green eyes flashed a few complexities. On the body of the sword that was originally white, there were several distorted characters like living creatures, wriggling from time to time. In Shindu's words, this is the magic belonging to a certain water demon, which can enhance the control over water. It is a kind of adaptation in advance. Although some don't understand the meaning of Shindu's words, Hurley Bell can still feel the care and kindness in this gift. There's often a big gap between the appearance of things and the reality. Hurley Bell raised the giant bone sword, and a huge Ryatsu poured into it, instantly making it glow with a golden destructive light. The undisguised explosion immediately attracted the attention of Minos Grande in the Void Knight Palace. Berrigan, who was far away in the center of the castle, even stood up from the throne, looked out of Shia Palace in surprise, and said puzzledly, Tia Hurley Bell's Ryatsu? Has she figured it out? Huh. The gate of Shia Palace is always open for her. Berrigan was talking to himself with a good feeling, and he raised his foot and was ready to meet Hurley Bell, who came to take refuge with him. But the next moment, all the Minos Grandes in the empty night palace saw the shadow that covered the sky and the sun. Endless sea tides swept in outside the Shuya Palace, forming majestic waves hundreds of meters high, burying the sprinkling of brilliance from the sky. Hurley Bell stood on the top of the water waves, sweeping across the Void Knight Palace from a bird's-eye view. Berrigan finally sensed something was wrong, and immediately flew towards the sky. The endless Ryatsu turned into a majestic black breath, and the smell of decay permeated the air, even overwhelming the majestic water vapor. The two correspond to each other, and the vasto lord-level Ryatsu collides in the sky. An air wave visible to the naked eye immediately formed, sweeping in all directions, and the rough building built below was instantly destroyed and crushed into powder. The Minos Grande of the Void Palace are far from the battlefield of the two. It's hard for them to even bear the aftermath, let alone participate in it. Hurley Bell, what do you mean? Berrigan was furious and asked in a suppressed voice, Are you going to declare war on the great king of Hueco Mundo? Facing the angry Berrigan, Hurley Bell remained as calm as water, and even his gaze didn't change much. Even she felt that the pressure of colliding with Berrigan Ryatsu was not as good as facing Shindu. Well, declare war. Hurley Bell nodded in acknowledgement, and Yu Jie's voice echoed in the air. But not in my name. Not long ago, I surrendered to His Majesty Shindu, and so did Sailaporo. The Minos Grande team you sent were all buried in the flames, leaving no wreckage behind. Hearing this, Berrigan's body froze immediately, and his bone-like body even made a tooth-piercing creaking sound, like chains that hadn't been oiled for a long time. It's only been a few days, and the whole army has been wiped out? He could hardly believe his ears, but there was nothing deceiving about Hurley Bell's calm demeanor, and this kind of thing can't be hidden for too long. The raging, killing intent filled Berrigan's heart until it turned into thicker black air and spread around him. Everything below it, no matter the white sand or the boulder, all turned into nothingness under the black air, leaving no trace left behind. Breath of death. Hurley Bell didn't care about Berrigan's mood at this time, and continued to say, without changing his face, I am here to declare war on the Shuya Palace in the name of His Majesty Shindu. I saw the huge white bone sword in her hand rising and falling, and a mighty wave swept up with an overwhelming momentum, in Berrigan's incredible eyes. It fell fiercely towards the Shuya Palace. For a moment, it seemed as if the doomsday was coming, and as far as the eyes could see, there were endless waves. Chapter 32, Welcome to My Place. Shinigami, the Shuya Palace, was plunged into the vast ocean, and everywhere it came into view was azure blue. Caught off guard, the Minos Grande were swept away, buildings crumbling and the ground sinking. Hurley Bell looked at his masterpiece, still as calm as before. It is different from the waterfall strike used when fighting Shendu. The vast ocean this time is just a pure water flow, and it cannot break the defense of Minos Grande at all. At most, it just made them choke on 2 mouthfuls of water. After all, the scope of Shuya Palace is not much smaller than that of the real city. If Hurley Bell destroys the city with the spiritual water again, her Ryatsu may not be enough to support her to leave here. Despicable guy. Berrigan seemed to regain his composure. His men didn't die. Most of them were just drowned by the tide. This grants you death. As the king of Hueco Mundo, Berrigan didn't have the slightest awareness that the 2 armies would fight without killing each other. Certainly, this also has something to do with the way Hurley Bell declared war. Declaring a war and directly flooding other people's lairs would make it impossible for anyone to hold back their anger. In comparison, Berrigan has been very restrained. The breath of death. Pale and distinct bone claws stretched out, pointing at Hurley Bell from afar. In an instant, the black aura centered on Berrigan suddenly rippled like ripples, spreading towards the distance at an extremely fast speed. Hurley Bell had fought against him before, so he was naturally aware of the horror of this black aura. She swung her sword down again. An endless white steam gushed out from the giant white bone, sword emitting golden light, which instantly turned into protection, blocking the breath of death. Sea current. The shield-shaped water vapor stream defense that was strong enough to withstand Minos Grande Cero at the same level, even failed to last for more than 3 seconds, before it directly turned into nothingness and dissipated in the air. But this time is enough for Hurley Bell to start the ring. I have issued the gauntlet. Hurley Bell's clear voice echoed over the entire Void Knight Palace. In a few days, His Majesty Shendu will visit Shuya Palace in person. By the time Berrigan manipulated the breath of death to sweep past the location where the sound came from, Hurley Bell had already disappeared in the distance. Only water vapor is left in the sky. Above the sky, Berrigan's expression was somber to ultimate, even though he never expected that the newly evolved Vasto Lord actually threatened his status. Even the virtual group that sent him out were all wiped out. Even Sailaporo chose to surrender to that guy. Not only that, the existence named Shendu, even Hurley Bell was subdued. What happened in this short period of time? Berrigan just feels cut off from the world. Is this your choice? He looked down at the white skeleton, talking to himself in a hoarse voice. I'll let you know how unwise this choice is. Streams of black aura hovered from the fingertips, devouring the remaining water vapor in the decaying air. Shendu knew nothing about what Hurley Bell was doing, but if he knew, he would probably praise him for a good job without hesitation. The Berrigan, who has been around since ancient times, is a pure egoist through and through. Shendu had disliked this guy a long time ago. There is no contradiction. It is simply not pleasing to the eye. That's all. Led by Kuratsuchi Mayuri, this Shinigami exploration team finally found the first target on the qualifying line near a certain cave 3,000 kilometers away from the Minos Grande forest. A Minos Grande that looks like a yak is lowering his head to devour his prey. Thick fur covered the body. 6 sharp knife-like horns grew on the huge head, and the white mask was twisted and covered with dark red blood. In terms of appearance alone, this guy is a pure war machine. The burly and tall figure even exceeds the conventional Jillian. After a round of charging, no matter how strong the city wall is, it will be trampled into smashed ruins. Ryatsu is far stronger than Jillian. A certain team member walking in the front conveyed the detection results in a small voice, for fear of disturbing the yak Minos Grande, who was eating. Judging from behavior, the individual consciousness has been awakened, and it should be at the Ajucha's level. The existence of special abilities has not been detected for the time being. Jillian is mostly composed of more than 100 different consciousnesses, so his behavior is chaotic and only instinct exists. But when they devour enough of their kind, they can purify their consciousness and evolve into ajuches. And there are a small number of individuals with great potential who can master special abilities in the ajuches stage, like the future Espada. Plan number 2, double the poison gas. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's eyes were cold, and he immediately gave the order. The team member who waited for the permission directly opened the special spiritual tool in the palm. A faint purple aura immediately diffused from their palms, enveloping the Yak Minos Grande. Under the cover of the night, the crooked moon's light is very limited, which also makes the actions of the Shinigami soldiers impossible to be discovered. This attack method does not have any Ryatsu fluctuations. When Minos Grande, the Yak, sensed something was wrong, his burly and tall body was already stiff, and he couldn't even take a step. Neurotoxin. Kuratsuchi Mayuri researched the best, enough to drive ajuches into a state of ossification. The hunt is complete. Kuratsuchi Mayuri grinned towards the ear, showing a weird smile. A guy of this size is enough to support 139 experiments. If you save a little 150 times is not impossible. Pack up, ready to return to Soul Society. The team members rushed forward, preparing to bring this guy back to the Soul Society smoothly by combining Kid with spiritual tools. But at this moment, there was a violent vibration in the air, and the high-density flow of spiritual particles was even more chaotic, showing irregular vibrations. The scorching breath filled the air in an instant. The temperature in the nearby area also rose accordingly, and the originally cool night suddenly seemed like a scorching sun at noon. The soldiers showed horror on their faces, and there was an unbearable burning pain from the respiratory tract to the lungs. Team Captain. The Ryatsu belonging to the Vasto Lord came to this area with a roar. The grains of sand are trembling with a magnitude visible to the naked eye. Under the horrified gazes of the Shinigami, a dark green figure stepped forward from the end of the distant line of sight. Shendu's magnetic magic sound echoed over the barren desert. Welcome to my place. Blood, red eyes followed, looking down at the Shinigami. Kuratsuchi Mayuri. Chapter 33, let me chop once. One stroke is enough. Ryatsu poured out like the sky collapsed. Ultimate's despair hangs over every Shinigami's heart. The pressure of Ryatsu, which I have never experienced before, is much stronger than the captain. What level of existence is this? King of Ajuches, or Vasto Lord. As a member of the 12th Division team, he is also a researcher who is valued by Kuratsuchi Mayuri. While this team of Shinigami has elite-level combat effectiveness, they also know a lot about various recorded secrets. Between them, Minos Grande is not too mysterious. But once it comes to the level of Vasto Lord, all the records become a dead letter. Faced with this level of Ryatsu, no one knows better than Kuratsuchi Mayuri what's going on. While the other Shinigami players were still guessing, he had already made up his mind. The dark green monster in front of him is definitely Vasto Lord. Possibly even the best of Vasto Lord. We're just here to catch an ajuches that's not uncommon in Hueco Mundo. So why would we invite monsters of this magnitude? Kuratsuchi Mayuri was a little bit depressed, but he still maintained his superficial calmness. Okay, there was a cold snort in the nasal cavity, and Kuratsuchi Mayuri spread his hands in a natural posture, making a weird sound. Vasto Lord, I didn't expect my name, even in existence, like you has already heard of it. What an honor. Shindu stared at the old god in front of Kuratsuchi Mayuri, and at a glance he saw that he was strong on the outside, but capable on the inside. Vasto Lord, who has never appeared in the history of Soul Society, suddenly appeared in front of Kuratsuchi Mayuri. How could this guy remain calm? According to records, Vasto Lord's standard combat strength is higher than that of the captain. Don't rush to be honored. Shindu flicked his fingers, and sparks exploded at his fingertips, instantly raising the surrounding temperature by a notch. As the first Shinigami to break into this realm, I invite you to participate in a small experiment. That will be related to the evolutionary process of Su as a species. At that time, you will be even more honored. When hearing the word experiment, Kuratsuchi Mayuri's gaze turned cold instantly. As the craziest researcher-scientist in the Soul Society, no one understands the horror of that word better than he. He has even tried countless experiments on himself, and he has personal experience. The experiment in the mouth of the Minos Grande in front of him will never be as simple as what he said. I'm so sorry. Kuratsuchi Mayuri tried to refuse. We still have important things in Soul Society. Next time, if there's a chance, I will accept your invitation again. Boom! The sharp claws flicked again. Sparks suddenly appeared, but this time they fell behind Kuratsuchi Mayuri and others. The moment Mars hit the ground, violent flames burst out, spreading hundreds of meters in an instant, directly enveloping the team of Shinigami. Burning the city. Simplified version. With Shendu's control over the flame, this can be done easily. In the field of flames, he is the real master. You still want to run after you come? Shendu didn't hide his thoughts at all. When will it be your Shinigami's turn to speak, Shuchuan? Seeing that the guy in front of him had no intention of letting him and the others go, Kuratsuchi Mayuri stopped pretending. Even the other Shinigami draw Zanpakuto, a heroic figure who fights to the death. I'll leave the rest of the Shinigami to you. Shendu waved his hand and signaled. These are all high-quality experimental materials. None of them can die. As his voice fell, another slender figure appeared in front of the Shinigami. The Ryatsu that Sailor never hid made the eyes of these Shinigami go dark, and endless despair arose in their hearts. Life is so dark. Even Kuratsuchi Mayuri's eyes widened. He could hardly believe what was happening in front of him. Another Vasto Lord. Did he stab Vasto Lord's nest? In the past, Hueco Mundo has never met or even heard of an existence hundreds of thousands of times. But two of them appeared at once. If there are no accidents, there will really be an accident this time. I often walk by the river without getting my shoes wet. Do not hesitate any longer. Kuratsuchi Mayuri immediately drew his own Zanpakuto, instantly liberated. Open your paws. Kitaka kills. Light bloomed on Zanpakuto, and purple gas diffused from it. The originally poisonous Zeta Odin gradually distorted its posture, forming a baby-like head, with its mouth slightly open, and a large amount of poisonous gas was escaping from it. The blade also split into three, twisted and sharp, showing a strange brass color. The Ryatsu of Kuratsuchi Mayuri also increases a little with the liberation of Zanpakuto. Shendu, who is very close to him, directly sensed this, but he didn't deliberately take it to heart. Kuratsuchi Mayuri is not a wall. His combat effectiveness is almost the weakest group among the captains. His real strength lies in the endless targeting methods and the almost pervert research ability. In terms of scientific research, he is stronger than him. Probably only Urahara Kisuke left, not even Sailor. Certainly, this is also related to the fact that Su and Shinigami are two completely different systems. Kuratsuchi Mayuri has countless knowledge left by the Shinigami ancestors, and Sailor can only explore and research on his own. The starting point of the two is not on the same level. Even without the guidance of his predecessors, this guy Sailor went straight to the wrong path. Kuratsuchi Mayuri grinned, showing his white teeth, and said with a grin, before he finished speaking, his figure disappeared directly in place. The speed of the instant burst does not belong to those Ajuchas who are good at speed. Footwork technique belonging to Shinigami, Shuinpa. This guy has no fighting spirit at all, trying to distract Shendu with words to complete the sneak attack. Kuratsuchi Mayuri stared at Shendu's dark green body and said in his heart, "Just let me hit it. One shot is enough." With the ability to kill Jizo, as long as one hit can be enough to delay the opponent's action. In this way, you'll be able to escape this dangerous area. Pucci, the sound of tearing flesh and blood, was especially clear in the empty and silent desert. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's eyes widened, and she looked at Shindu's claws holding the sharp blade in surprise. A trace of bright red is slowly oozing out from the contact place, staining the blade. Chapter 34 on Nausea. You are less than 1/100th of Kuratsuchi Mayuri. Ha 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 ha. The wild and triumphant laughter echoed in the barren desert. Kuratsuchi Mayuri maintains a stabbing posture, and the black and white mask is full of arrogance. And what about Vasto Lord? You will never forget the fate of underestimating the enemy. You can't move your body anymore. He grinned grimly. It doesn't matter if you know my name, but you still don't know the ability to kill Jizo. Before Kuratsuchi Mayuri finished speaking, she was interrupted by Shendu. Is it possible to make the limbs of the chopped target unable to move? Shendu glanced at Kuratsuchi Mayuri with disdain, selectively cut off the signal to move limbs among the countless signals sent by the brain. It can disable the limbs of the enemy within the control range, but it will not lose consciousness, so as to satisfy your pervert desire to torture. Zampicut is really a reflection of the soul. You showed me the absolute ugliness. Nirvana, cocoonly, when Shendu uttered the first sentence. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's expression was completely frozen. And as the secret of killing Jizo was constantly revealed, it was more like the pause button was pressed, and he didn't move at all. If it weren't for the slight breathing sound, it might be considered a dead thing. A long time, Kuratsuchi Mayuri breathed heavily, stared at Shendu with ferocious eyes, and said unwillingly, "Then why don't you dodge? With Vasto Lord speed, it should be easy to dodge." Bloody eyes rolled, and the depths of Shindu's pupils reflected undisguised contempt. Because click! A clear voice resounded in Kuratsuchi Mayuri's ears. His eyes widened suddenly, with an expression of disbelief reflected in them. Killing Jizo, it was broken. It was broken abruptly. The brass-colored blade fell from Shindu's claws and sank into the white sand beneath his feet. This level of ability will not affect me at all. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's pupils constricted suddenly, and his breathing became heavier. Unspeakable fear spread in his heart until it ate away at his heart bit by bit. The dark green palm was full of blood, and it looked a little embarrassed. But soon, it recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. With Shindu's current high-speed regeneration, this degree of injury can be fully recovered in just 1 or 2 breaths. The tyrannical violence of the bull talisman directly broke the Jisha Dizang. But Shindu's physical body is not strong enough to withstand the corresponding sharpness, and the reaction will naturally cause him to be injured. As for the ability to kill Xidagarba, for Shendu, it will not cause the slightest impact. At the moment when Disha Dizang pierced into the palm, the magic energy of fire burned the medicine produced by it directly, leaving no trace left. Shindu's blood is not a simple creation. The large amount of demonic energy of fire contained in it is unbearable even for Vasto Lord of the same level. Not to mention a Zampicut that Bankai didn't even release. Kuratsuchi Mayuri staggered back, still holding the hilt of Kizuro Jizo tightly, and Ryatsu circled around, forming a materialized posture around the whole body. What a frightening monster. He recovered from the shock, and once again faced Shendu with a weird smile. However, I don't only have this means. Don't underestimate my uncle too much. With the sound of a sudden roar, Kuratsuchi Mayuri's masked face suddenly became hideous. Bangkok, Golden Zodiac kills Xidagarba. The red Ryatsu soared into the sky, sweeping up the white sand under the feet in an instant, turning it into a strong wind, howling in the open space. The Zampicut in Kuratsuchi Mayuri's hand disappeared and melted into Ryatsu. The wriggling mass of flesh transformed into Ryatsu, constantly distorting its shape and turned into a monster-like posture. The red glow faded. A real monster appeared in front of Shendu. Although he was mentally prepared, Shendu was still a little nervous. This thing looks even worse than those random guys in Minos Grande Forest. On the huge baby's head, there's a pair of godless eyes staring at the silver bell ring. The back is covered with rosacea, and the lower body is covered with meat and silkworm tails. Dense columns are wriggling under the abdomen. Although the Jizo in the Shurkai state was broken by Shendu, it still successfully completed the Bankai under the Ryatsu installation of Kuratsuchi Mayuri. Even compared with the appearance in Shindu's impression, there is no change. Endless purple, poisonous mist spewed out from the giant baby's mouth, expanding and filling the battlefield in an instant. It spread even further afield to Sailaporo and the rest of the Shinigami squad. This guy, Sailaporo, frowned, his face full of disgust. He smelled something of the same kind in this Shinigami captain. But it was also because of this taste that he felt extremely repelled. Same as expulsion. Sailaporo casually threw out a few red false bullets, directly dispelling the spreading poisonous mist. These Shinigami are precious resources and must not be wasted. Watching the Vasto Lord in front of them save themselves and others. When the Shinigami looked at Sailaporo again, they were suddenly different. Complicated, grateful, hated. However, they did not give up their attacks, and the chain of kid and slashes roared forward. Although the power is average, the momentum is extremely huge. For a while, it even overwhelmed Bankai's, killing Jizo, tear him apart, and kill Jizo. Facing Shendu, who suppressed himself in all directions, Kuratsuchi Mayuri did not mean to speak harshly at all. I only hope that the poisonous mist and attack released by the golden killing Jizo can restrain this monster to a certain extent. Numerous venom-coated sharp blades protruded from the golden Jizo's chest, and countless fleshy feet squirmed frantically, making a rumbling sound on the sand, like thunder. Such a slow attack can't even compare to Holy Bell's revolving speed. Shendu raised one hand, and the golden rays of light burst out interlaced from the palm, dazzling in the dark night like a dazzling golden sun. Ryatsu exploded and solidified. With a figure like a devil, he stomped on the desert. A huge amount of spiritual particles gathered, attached to the terrifying high temperature enough to suffocate Shinigami, turned into a torrent of power, and erupted from the palm of Shendu. Boom! The huge beam of light entangled in gold and red. With its indomitable momentum, completely engulfed the golden Xidagarba in an instant. The terrifying high temperature instantly melted the ugly skin, and the endless torrent of spiritual particles tore the flesh and bones inside, until it turned to charred dust, floating down from the blazing heat. When the temperature drops, Cero subsides. Kuratsuchi Mayuri stood there with a frozen expression as if petrified. Suddenly, he knelt down on the ground. A large amount of blood spurted from his mouth along with pieces of internal organs. Embarrassed to the extreme. Chapter 35, Two Scientists. Big event. The sound of a violent cough echoed in the empty space. It's like coughing up all your lungs. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's posture was not at all what a captain should look like. Ahem. Although I have long guessed the destruction of Zampicut and made corresponding settings to prepare for it, he barely stood upright and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. But it's the first time I've encountered such a situation of being destroyed by the enemy. It still makes this body a little unbearable. As a mad scientist, Kuratsuchi Mayuri not only transformed his own body, but also transformed it along with Zampicut. In addition to blessing various settings, it also increases its lethality. However, because of his extremely limited strength level, this method can't increase his combat effectiveness much. If there is no enemy intelligence, once encountering an enemy that is too powerful, like Shendu, Kuratsuchi Mayuri's situation will be quite dangerous. But with other captains, the situation is not much better. Shindu's current strength is absolutely no less than any regular captain, and even far exceeds it. You win. Kuratsuchi Mayuri raised his hands, subdued without a trace of spine. Judging from the Ryatsu and combat power you've shown up to now, it's easy to kill me. But you didn't do that. As a scientist, his observation ability is also in place. That proves that I have a more important role to you. It's really embarrassing. Kuratsuchi Mayuri grinned weirdly. Never before, not even that Urahara guy has made me so embarrassed. Facing this guy's submissiveness, Shendu was not surprised at all. But because of the particularity of Kuratsuchi Mayuri, it is definitely not a reliable way to just stay with him so easily. Ever since, under the surprised gaze of Kuratsuchi Mayuri, Shendu took out the paper from his pocket. With the writing of the devil's words, The original ordinary paper also possesses the power of the devil. Although you know more about current affairs than that guy in the distance. Shendu commented, but you two essentially belong to the same kind of existence. I won't trust you so much. Sign it, or chop off the limbs and put them in containers for experimentation. The nature of Kuratsuchi Mayuri is also an extremely twisted one. If he is allowed to be under his command without restriction, the entire Hueco Mundo will become his testing ground in a few days. What is this? The emergence of new things immediately attracted the attention of Kuratsuchi Mayuri. He took the contract and looked at it carefully, analyzed it carefully, and even tried to integrate it with Ryatsu. A contract of submission. Shendu didn't explain much, sign or die. Choose yourself. 10, 9, 8, 7. As if the countdown was over, he was ready to do it. Time is precious and cannot be wasted. How to sign? Kuratsuchi Mayuri doesn't want to die. He still has countless scientific experiments to do, and he hasn't really surpassed that disgusting guy. Blood. Concise and concise. Kuratsuchi Mayuri didn't waste it, dipped the blood directly on the ground, and then signed his name on the contract. As the last stroke fell, his soul suddenly felt controlled. It's as if the whole person is held in the palm of the hand, and it is possible to die completely at any time. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's eyes widened. His golden pupils stared at Shendu firmly, and the black and white mask was full of disbelief. Soul, Shendu nodded logically, and a magnetic voice sounded. The devil's contract, of course, is based on the soul. Now you, as long as there is even a little bit of wrong thinking, punishment will follow. Kuratsuchi Mayuri breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that. It's just a punishment, at worst a little injury. For the great Kuratsuchi Mayuri, this is a small problem. Certainly, Shendu said lightly. Some punishments are more terrible than death. Say it. With his sharp claws, he tore the crack in the different dimension again, and the dragon's head came out of it, making a deafening roar. After stuffing the contract into the dragon's mouth, Shendu canceled the summoning. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's eyes widened. What is this? Bioforms never seen before. It's like Minos Grande, but it has a completely different atmosphere. Only the tyrannical eyes, without a little bit of individual consciousness. Is it a special creation similar to Yihin? I'll let you try to get in touch later. Shendu took control of Kuratsuchi Mayuri's soul and was in a good mood. In addition to Sailaporo's words, the research progress of the Arankar method will definitely be completed as soon as possible. He himself doesn't care. In the form of a dragon body, that is to say, the individual appears a little bigger. When evolving into Vasto Lord, his body size has been reduced a lot. Not to mention, rather than relying on the outside world, Shendu hopes to achieve an independent Arankar. To this, he pinned his hope elsewhere. Hearing Shendu's words, Kuratsuchi Mayuri temporarily suppressed his curiosity in his heart. From the moment he came into contact with it until now, he discovered that the Vasto Lord-level Wang Su in front of him had no less secrets than Hueco Mundo. Even more, even if it's just a brief encounter. Stop fighting on other battlefields. Shendu ordered. That guy Sailaporo has been watching the show for a long time. Kuratsuchi Mayuri Shunpa went over and gathered his subordinates with orders. Even if there are more than a dozen Shinigami, even if they are placed in the Soul Society, they can be called the absolute elite. But facing an opponent of Vasto Lord's level, he still seemed extremely powerless. When they were ordered, they collapsed one by one, without any thought of fighting again. Sailaporo's weird methods didn't look like he was fighting at all, like a puppeteer teasing their hearts and souls. Even if they died or were captured by Minos Grande, they were unwilling to continue fighting. Captain, is there any hope for us to return to the Soul Society? One of the team members asked with a look of despair. Kuratsuchi Mayuri froze, shook his head and nodded, not sure about it either. Everything is based on His Majesty's wishes. After signing the contract, he had already lost his autonomy in certain matters, but although in a sense lost freedom. But for Kuratsuchi Mayuri, it seems that all is not so difficult to accept. Even vaguely guessing his purpose from Shendu's words, Kuratsuchi Mayuri was full of curiosity about those unknown things. Sailaporo walked to Shindu's side and asked in surprise, "Your Majesty, is such an inferior creature worth signing a contract?" Heard the words. Shindu looked at Sailaporo very seriously, and a half-smile in his eyes made his heart tremble a little. "Kuratsuchi Mayuri will be with you day and night for a long time to come. His value is not lower than yours. Celebrate the 7-day long holiday of National Day and enjoy reading books. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge. Activity time. October 1st to October 7th. Chapter 36, if you are Maureen and Yam. Your tongue will stick out." Sailaporo's words did not arouse the anger of Kuratsuchi Mayuri. Couldn't even make his expression change. Kuratsuchi Mayuri lowered his head and gave Sailaporo a disdainful look in a slanted posture. From Shindu's words just now, it is not difficult for him to guess that this vasto lord named Sailaporo is treated at the same level as him. In this sense, the two are now colleagues. That being the case, the other party has nothing to respect, just the same inferior creature. Going with the situation is the greatest strength of Kuratsuchi Mayuri. Shindu did not intend to adjust the relationship between the two at all. If they can't handle this trivial matter well, they should kill it early and go to hell to accept a new life. The forest of Minos Grande. Santos waited respectfully for Shindu's return. He didn't even show a surprised expression when he saw the Shinigami, like Kuratsuchi Mayuri, behind him. Because in Santos' view, His Majesty Shindu is omnipotent. It's just a Shinigami team. Even if it is handled by Sailaporo, it will end in the same way. Not to mention His Majesty Shindu himself. "Your Majesty, these guys..." Santos stepped forward and scattered a few stray hairs. Kuratsuchi Mayuri looked at the feathers on the ground. Thoughtful colors flashed in his golden pupils. "Familiar Ryatsu, familiar feather shape. You're the Ajuchas who watch us." Santos glanced at Kuratsuchi Mayuri subconsciously and was frightened by the fanatical gesture in his eyes and couldn't help shivering. But when he saw Shindu, he took courage again, straightened his chest, and said proudly, "That's right, it's me. The most powerful scout under His Majesty Shindu, Santos." Pure dog licking. Kuratsuchi Mayuri immediately defined the guy. "He made a contract with me," Shindu said indifferently. From today on, Kuratsuchi Mayuri and Sailaporo have the same status and are both researchers of the White Tower. Also, is there any new news about the expansion of the Minos Grande Forest? Kuratsuchi Mayuri's surrender did not improve the progress of the template. This can't help but make Shindu a little annoyed. However, judging from the current situation, Kuratsuchi Mayuri's strength is not enough to compare with Vasto Lord. Although in Shindu's eyes, this guy's potential far exceeds that of Sailaporo. Of course, it may also be related to the type of talent. The first scientific researcher to be subdued was Sailaporo, and the next one had no pioneering development. It did not play a decisive role in the establishment of the Dragon Dynasty. Naturally, there will be no further step towards the ultimate. In this case, they can only pin their hopes on the Minos Grande Forest Expeditionary Force. Once they discover Espada, or something similar to Espada, the template progress can go a step further. For the rest of the spells, he has been envious for a long time. Nothing has been discovered yet. Santos was a little dejected, but His Majesty's territory is constantly expanding. I believe that soon, the whole Hueco Mundo will proclaim His Majesty's name. In this regard, Santos seems more confident than Shindu. Continue the expedition and explore, and report to the White Tower at any time if any abnormality is found. Shindu gave the order, "Let Cortez go too. If you stay in the forest of Minos Grande, your hooves will grow hair." Santos looked excited, as if he had been on hormones. Yes, he flapped his wings, scattered the miscellaneous hairs all over the place, and flew towards the depths of the Minos Grande forest. What a loyal subordinate. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's tone obviously has an yin and yang meaning. It just seems that the brain is not working well. If you speak in this tone again, your tongue will stick out. Shindu will not be used to this guy like Yamamoto Genryusai. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's old face darkened, and he immediately closed his mouth. "Let's go to the White Tower." For the next research, Shendu can't wait. Whether you can reach Arrancar and make your own power go further depends on now. White Tower, a humble lab built by Ajuchas, with details perfected by Sailaporo. Because it looks like a white tower, Shendu named it the White Tower. When the three of them formally walked into the White Pagoda, they found a tall figure among them had been waiting for a long time. Feeling that unabashed Ryatsu, Kuratsuchi Mayuri's eyes widened again. Unbelievable fact. Another Vasto, Lord Wang Su. Even from the point of view of the outsider Ryatsu, this one is stronger than Sailaporo. Your Majesty, Shendu. Hurley Bell bowed slightly and calmly said in a respectful manner, "The gauntlet has been issued. According to your request, the entire Xia Palace has been submerged by the tide." Shendu is quite satisfied with her extremely arrogant approach. Well, you're doing well. The next experimental research is related to Arrancar. Let's stay and observe together. Hurley Bell was silent, walked slowly to Shendu's side, and waited quietly. Which part do you start with? Kuratsuchi Mayuri is full of strong curiosity about the unknown. Let's talk about the concept of Arrancar first. Shendu sat on the stone chair. How much do you know about the Suriidii Captain Hollow incident? Kuratsuchi Mayuri gulped, his fingers fidgeting with slightly nervous emotion. How does this guy know everything? Captain Hollow incident. Even in Suriidii, only the captain and a small number of team members know about it. How did Shendu, Vasto Lord, know such a level of secrecy? Has the Soul Society been infiltrated into a sieve by Hueco Mundo? For a moment, countless thoughts raced through Kuratsuchi Mayuri's mind, analyzing all the intelligence information collected in the Technology Development Bureau, trying to judge some clues from it. Or is one of the current captains Minos Grande in disguise? As a scientific researcher, imagination is the most important thing. With the blessing of this feature, in just a few seconds, Kuratsuchi Mayuri even began to suspect Yamamoto Motoyanaji Shigekuni. Ow! Shendu showed dissatisfaction. You don't know anything, but don't you want to tell? Kuratsuchi Mayuri suppressed those unrealistic thoughts, took a deep breath, and resumed his previous posture. As for the Captain Hollow incident, it may involve the former captain of the 12th team. Chapter 37, if you have a chance. Catch them all, Urahara Kisuk. Shendu said indifferently. I know him. If there is a chance in the future, I will catch him together and become colleagues with you. One of the 5 special combat powers, it uses endless means to cross the 3 realms, and it is almost never deflated. Shendu has been thinking about this kind of excellent existence for a long time. As for how to prevent this guy from rebelling, Shendu designed a set of contracts for him, including 369 kinds of restrictions, which can definitely curb those dangerous thoughts of Urahara Kisuk. Although he's also conducting dangerous experiments, the Captain Hollow incident has nothing to do with him. The planner is still hiding among you. He didn't go on. After completing the study of the Arrancar method, Kuratsuchi Mayuri will still be put back into the Soul Society to act as a spy and information messenger. Hueco Mundo does not lack his combat power. Soul Society is the perfect place for this guy. If he reveals too much, maybe this guy will spy on Aizen. At that time, if one is not careful, it is very likely to be killed directly. Such a useful chess piece cannot be discarded casually. Adhering to this idea, Shendu did not continue talking. Kuratsuchi Mayuri took another deep breath, suppressing his restlessness repeatedly. He found himself in front of Shendu, the guy who knew nothing. Why do the secrets of the Soul Society seem like gossip to this Vasto Lord of Hueco Mundo? The real murderer is... Kuratsuchi Mayuri tried to continue asking, but Shendu didn't answer what he meant, but asked a question that had nothing to do with these. Are there any talented students in the current spiritual academy? Although it is not clear why this question is asked, because of the contract, it is not easy for Kuratsuchi Mayuri to question it. He tapped his temple with the knuckle of his right index finger, making a dull, thumping sound. There is a young genius who masters the ice element Zampakit, who seems to be called Chur, who has graduated from the Academy of Spiritual Arts ahead of schedule and has joined the Jubin team. Kuratsuchi Mayuri began to move his fingers again, making a clicking sound as if he was not willing to settle down for a moment. I once proposed to the captain to conduct an analysis of that little guy's soul, but it was rejected. The captain even strictly forbids me to approach the 10th team's team building. He said the creepy words calmly. There must be something special about such a talented little guy. What a pity! Hurley Bell looked at Kuratsuchi Mayuri in disgust and put him and Sailaporo in the same field. So much so that she subconsciously moved away from the two pervert guys and moved closer to Shendu. Is Hitsugaya Chur? Shendu roughly judged the current timeline. Hitsugaya Chur only stayed at the Shino Spiritual Art Academy for 1 year before he joined the Juban team ahead of schedule. Judging from Kuratsuchi Mayuri's words, this matter has not passed too long. Judging from this point, the major events in modern times have not yet happened, such as the soul burial practice in Counter Minos Grande and the appearance of Shubai, the disappearance of Kuro Sakiishin, and so on. But not far behind. This also means that Aizen may come to Hueco Mundo at any time. I see. Shindu directly terminated this topic and returned to the main topic. Actually, if you study the hollow phenomenon related to Hirako Shinji and others, it should not be difficult to find. After these Shinigami completed hollow, although their rationality is the same as that of the subordinates, their strength has increased a lot. Kuratsuchi Mayuri has gradually become numb to Shindu's omniscience. Not to mention the more detailed information about the hollow incident. Even if he tells his secrets that are unknown, Kuratsuchi Mayuri will not be surprised at all. If you can control this power, Shindu's blood-red eyes stare directly at Kuratsuchi Mayuri. Shinigami's strength is bound to usher in a skyrocketing improvement. The corresponding is the Aaroncarization of Minos Grande. Since Shinigami can master the power of Hollow, why can't Minos Grande master the power of Shinigami? This sentence seemed to have knocked on Kuratsuchi Mayuri's head, giving him the feeling of enlightenment. A new path is presented in front of him, and the future is bright. This situation, Kuratsuchi Mayuri's golden eyes were suddenly full of enthusiasm. Soul Ryatsu, physical body, relative power. He muttered some words that Shindu couldn't understand at all, but Sailaporo, who was on the side, listened, and his eyes also lit up as if he saw a confidant. Two crazy guys coincided with each other at this moment. You can ask me any questions about the soul. Shindu gave the two the greatest authority. Be sure to complete the Aaroncarization research of Minos Grande in the shortest possible time, because there is a successful example of Sailaporo, and there is no shortage of Shinigami or Minos Grande. Research can begin at any time. Shindu directly delegated power and let these two guys fiddle with it. As for the devil magic and soul involved, he will selectively answer for the two of them. Aaroncarization research begins. Considering that the number of Shinigami is scarce, Sailaporo used the ability to copy dolls to produce a large number of Shinigami soldiers using the 12th Squadron as a template. Although there is a slight difference in nature, it is enough to cope with the previous experiments. From dissection to decomposition, from body to soul, from Ryatsu and Lingzi. The methods of the two, in a sense, directly broadened Shindu's horizons. Turns out there's still this creepy way to go. Hurley Bell looked at the scene in front of him with some unbearable patience, thus strengthening his determination to protect those around him. Seeing that the experiment had reached a fever pitch, the dispute between the two became more and more fierce. Even from time to time, he uses himself as the experimental material to conduct some kind of indescribable experimental research. Shendu quietly left the White Tower with Hurley Bell. His time is precious and must not be wasted on meaningless things. It has not been long since I left the White Tower. Santos looked up excitedly. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. New discovery, important information. Countless feathers fell from the sky, and the excited Santos respectfully landed in front of Shendu, bending down. To the southwest of the forest of Minos Grande, and Ajucha's expedition team has lost contact. Chapter 38, Despicable Fighting Spirit. The raid buried in the white sand lost contact. Shendu repeated. The crimson pupils glowed brighter, like a blood moon. According to the rules laid down by Lord Hurley Bell, when each Ajucha's team is expanding its territory, A member will come back every 3 days to report the specific situation. Santos has an extraordinary respect for Hurley Bell, even second only to facing Shendu. But 5 days have passed, and no member has returned at all. Just now, my subordinates went to explore, and they didn't find any abnormal Ryatsu at all. All that was found was a pile of scattered bones. Speaking of this, anyone is very clear. That Ajucha's expedition team probably entered the belly of a certain Minos Grande. Shendu is not surprised by this situation. In Hueco Mundo, there are many dangers. The strong prey on each other, and the law of the jungle is brought into full play. It can only be regarded as good luck that there has been no loss of contact until now. Hurley Bell, you come with me. Shendu looked sideways and said in an undeniable tone, yes. Because of the cover of the mask, Hurley Bell's expression was unclear, but his green eyes were as calm as ever. It's like a lake without waves. Santos, you are in charge of leading the way. Yes. In contrast, Santos looked extremely excited, looking like he had too much hormone. With continuous self-hypnosis and the blessing effect of demonic magic, the loyalty of Minos Grande like him to Shendu is getting higher and higher. As long as it is Shendu's order, even if there is a deadly trap ahead, they will not hesitate at all. Forest of Minos Grande, southwest. Santos soared above the clouds in the sky, providing Shendu below with information about the road ahead from time to time. As a rare vulture from Minos Grande, his flying method does not need to consume too much Ryatsu and is several times faster than the normal Minos Grande, a natural intelligence agent. Your Majesty, 10 kilometers ahead. Santos' shrill voice came from above. Because of his reminder, Shendu also quickly discovered where the pile of bones was. Huge skeletons piled up, forming the shape of a hill. This Ajucha's expedition team was wiped out. As he continued to approach, the concentration of spirit particles in the air also increased. Viscous spiritual particle concentration. Shendu sniffed lightly. It's no less than the deepest part of the Minos Grande forest. Comparable to Night Palace, added Hurley Bell. Shendu grinned. A cruel and vicious smile emerged, and surging Ryatsu surged all over his body. It looks like it's an absolutely powerful Minos Grande. Hurley Bell bit her lower lip lightly, her delicate eyebrows huddled together tightly. There are shares. Uncomfortable Ryatsu. Without waiting for her to remind, Shendu has already walked towards the pile of bones unprepared. The hill of bones began to tremble and shake, and the pale bones kept falling from above. And just when Hurley Bell was vigilant about the scene in front of him, a berserk Ryatsu suddenly exploded under the sand. In just an instant, the sharp blade, gleaming with cold light, landed in front of Shendu. Pucci, the sound of tearing flesh and blood echoed in the desert, mixed with the sound of bones colliding, forming a strange movement. Your Majesty Shendu. Hurley Bell's eyes widened, almost in disbelief at what was happening before him. There was actually a Minos Grande hiding under the sand, covering his attack with the shaking of bones. When she and Shendu's attention was completely attracted, they immediately launched a surprise attack. Before this, Hurley Bell didn't even notice the slightest abnormality. Shendu let the pain in his palm provoke his nerves and looked at the sneaker nonchalantly. The long-lost pain may make his blood boil before the war comes. The thin and slender tall figure is not even lost to Shendu. On the top of the head, a huge crescent-shaped horn pierces through the skull, as if inserted into the head. The frenzied and crazy expression on his face, with his tongue sticking out, showed the guy's almost morbid state of mind. The 4 slender arms have distinct joints, and they are covered with sharp teeth shining with cold light. The fingers are long and slender, like 10 sharp knives. One of the arms tried to penetrate Shendu's chest, but was stopped by his palm. Okay, the sneak attacker made a puzzled voice. It actually blocked it. What a surprise. However, what about this time? Before he could finish his words, the other 3 arms rushed towards him like lightning. The golden Ryatsu also exploded, forming a dazzling light, trying to influence Shendu's sight. Boom! The rapid speed even broke through the air barrier. A hint of ecstasy flashed in the depths of the sneaker's black pupils, as if he had seen the Minos Grande in front of him being pierced through the chest by him and dying tragically on the spot. However, just as the sharp knife-like fingertips were about to touch Shindu's vitals, scorching flames erupted directly. The terrifying high temperature and impact, like a heavy hammer, slammed into the attacker's abdomen. The whole ghost suddenly turned into an arc like a cannonball and flew out towards the distance. What a despicable way to fight. Shindu raised his paws, threw out a few drops of blood, and immediately burned the nearby white bones into ashes. Familiar looks, familiar meanness. He already recognized who the sneak-attacking guy was. A pervert paranoid, a despicable person who completely loses his ideas in order to win the battle. Future Espada Fifth Neutra Gilga. Fighting is nothing more than winning or losing. How can there be anything despicable? After enduring Shindu's Dragon Blast, this guy turned out to be only slightly scorched black on the skin, and even the slightest crack could not be seen on the armor-like bones. There was a hint of madness in this guy's eyes, and his face was covered by a narrow bone mask. As long as I can kill you, despicableness will also become righteous. Besides you, that ugly woman next to me, Minos Grande, will also die together. What a disgusting smell. Chapter 39. Since ancient times, against waves, the left must lose. What he said really offended Shendu and Hurlybell completely. It can only be said that Neutra's mocking ability is second to none in Espada. Your existence will become the most important step on my evolutionary path. Perhaps tasting the strength from Shendu's sloppy Ryatsu, Neutra's tone reveals a hint of morbidity. The pursuit of fighting against the strong is his lifelong pursuit. Neutra Gilga, the name means fighting without reason, although it will be a sharp knife if used well. Shindu dissatisfied, but I don't like subordinates like mad dogs. Although among the high-end combat power under him now, only Hurlybell is weak. Sailaporo and Kuratsuchi Mayuri. These two can only be used as a reserve force. In most cases, they need to research some spiritual weapons or spiritual tools. But for Neutra, a despicable and unlimited guy, Shindu is extremely disliked. What stupid things are you talking about? Neutra didn't understand the meaning of Shindu's words, and the four arms shook in the air in a twisted posture. Crazy is the essence of fighting, and it is the important reason for victory. The wild laughter echoed in the air, shaking the sand grains on the ground, and even transforming the high concentration of spirit particles in the air. The entire empty center of gravity moved backwards, and the speed of the instant explosion even formed afterimages in the air. I will definitely tear you apart bit by bit. That tyrannical face instantly approached Shindu, and the manic laughter echoed in his eardrums, as if trying to penetrate it. The four arms slashed forward in different directions. Hurlybell's expression has gradually returned to calm from the initial surprise, because she didn't see the slightest panic in Shindu's eyes. On the contrary, the playful meaning seemed to be condensed into essence, overflowing from it. However, Neutra, who fell into a battle frenzy, didn't realize this at all, and was even proud of his previous sneak attack. No Minos Grande of this level can perceive the Ryatsu I hide. I must be able to kill him, and then eat them all bit by bit until they evolve in a Vasto Lord-level Wang Su. The sharp edge of the arm formed an afterimage, and even became blurred in vision. Even before the slash fell, Shindu could still clearly perceive the invincible sharpness. As a Juches, Neutra's strength has far surpassed Santos and the others, and is even infinitely close to Vasto Lord. Pity Shindu is also above the same level of Vasto Lord. Before the slash fell completely, Shindu directly raised his hand to grab it, and held his two arms in his palm at a more rapid speed. Sensing the majestic force coming from his arm, Neutra didn't panic at all, and even his face was full of ecstasy. Idiot, I have four arms. The other two arms suddenly accelerated the speed of the slashing, as if they were going to cut Shindu open. Click it. The crisp cracking sound echoed in Neutra's ears, making his movements froze. Unspeakable pain came from the two upper arms. Neutra looked to both sides with horrified eyes. The two arms held by Shendu in the palm were crushed abruptly. The bone stubble penetrated the flesh and blood and penetrated the skin. After only the second contact, he was totally at a disadvantage. The veins on Neutra's forehead were bulging, and the depths of his heart were filled with fear and anger, which almost destroyed his few sanity. The berserk Ryatsu released unscrupulously, forming a violent rebound force, directly tore off the two arms completely and got rid of Shendu's shackles. Good battle decision, Shendu praised. Under a disadvantage, he can be so decisive. That will alone is more than enough to surpass most Ajuchas. However, to Neutra's ears, these words became a naked mockery. Standing on the high position of the winner, Shendu satirized the loser with a gesture of disdain and contempt. He flickered into the distance. His arms were hanging down weakly, and the lower end from the elbow joint was already bloody. The severe pain made Neutra tremble uncontrollably. I don't know how long it has been. He had never been injured so badly, and the pain consumed his sanity. Boom! The golden-yellow Ryatsu is almost congealed. Ring and turn. An injury of this degree will not make Lord Neutra give up. The afterimage stays where it is, taking Neutra's place, and the tall and thin figure flashed behind Shendu in an instant. The remaining intact arm stabbed again, trying to cut off the enemy's spine. But even if his speed has exploded to ultimate, he still can't attack Shendu at all. Under the same two arms, even if there were countless thrusts and strikes, they were all stopped by Shendu. That contemptuous gesture was like playing with a child. There is no intention of fighting at all. Neutra didn't hesitate anymore. When he even opened his mouth, the materialized golden Ryatsu all over his body gathered in front of him like flowing water. Go to hell, arrogant BD. Fatal. From the time his arm was crushed, he's been gathering Ryatsu. This attack will be the scariest Cero in Neutra's life. Enough to swallow everything in front of it. Facing the approaching Cero, Shendu still maintained a disdainful attitude, except that the blood-red eyes were instantly filled with gold. The scorching breath spread around it. There was even a burning smell in the air. Immeasurable golden light beams shot out from Shendu's eyes and met Neutra's Cero in an instant. The two strands of gold blended together, as if forming one body, becoming more and more dazzling. However, Neutra, who was one of the attackers, watched carefully, and the Cero, who had tried his best, was directly annihilated in a destructive gesture. Even the remaining power of the golden light beam remained undiminished, and it exploded directly in his direction. The temperature on the battlefield also rose accordingly, as if scorching by the scorching sun. As the beam approached, Neutra seemed to see death coming. His eyes were about to burst, and Ryatsu tried his best, and at the critical moment he dodged out. However, the golden light beam still passed by his body. Wait for the agitated dust to disperse. A figure with half of its body melted staggered on the battlefield. Chapter 40 Breakthrough in Battle. Neutra's protagonist template starting from the abdominal cavity. The huge gap swallowed nearly half of Neutra's viscera, and the charred flesh completely lost its vitality. The arm that had already been crushed in half was not even fragmented. On the skull, the crescent-shaped horns were half melted, making it look extremely ugly and terrifying. There is no image at all. The only pity is that this blow avoided his heart, so that Neutra did not die completely. The pierced body, like a dilapidated doll, barely stood on the spot. The unbelievable gaze froze in the depths of the pupils. The remaining golden Ryatsu tries to activate the ability of high-speed regeneration to restore the body. Behind him, a canyon-like ravine stretched across the desert, and the depth of the ravine was even more glazed due to the high temperature. The scorched flesh squirmed, producing a large number of granulation, constantly mending the incomplete parts. Even if Neutra has not performed Aaronkar yet, its high-speed regeneration ability is not even weaker than that after Aaronkar. The injury was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. The heavy breathing echoed across the desert, and Neutra's chest pulled like a bellows. Are you kidding? How could I die like this? I want to climb to the top of Hueco Mundo, great Neutra-sama. Neutra was even more crazy, but he couldn't hide the panic and fear in his eyes. The vasto lord in front of him was a little too scary, like a monster. Shendu watched Neutra struggling to recover with interest, without interrupting him at all. Not yet Neutra of Arankar, but in a juches. No matter how strong it is, there is a limit. Even if the potential is amazing, even if his future is enough to become Espada Fifth, even if he symbolizes the death of despair. I must kill you. Neutra roared with all his might. Go to hell. Although his body hadn't fully recovered, he couldn't contain the madness and tyranny in his heart. The murderous, intense sword and the golden Ryatsu took the shape of a giant praying mantis and roared awe-inspiringly in the same posture. Looking at Neutra in this posture, Shendu showed a rare look of surprise on the calm face of the dragon. Unexpectedly, at this time, the level of Vasto Lord was touched. The power of the mind. In fact, Neutra is a very typical bully. In the original book, she kept provoking Neutra and even clamored to kill her as well. But he is even more clear that no matter how he provokes a fight, Nilou will only defeat him. With Nilou's mentality, she has always hated meaningless battles, and even less like killing and devouring her own kind. As long as it doesn't touch the things she values, she will generally live in peace. Relatively speaking, her character is very similar to Holy Bell. But there's also a little difference in essence. After Holy Bell replaced Nilou as the new third Espada, Neutra stopped provoking Holy Bell, who is also a female queen, because he knew very well that Holy Bell would definitely kill him without hesitation. This is where the difference lies. How can a guy who has no fighting spirit and can only bully the weak and fear the hard have a lot of potential? And how can he smoothly evolve to Vasto Lord? Now Neutra, under the oppression of Shendu's desperate strength, has slightly changed his philosophy. When even touching the Vasto Lord level, the golden Cero erupted again. The phantom of a giant praying mantis merged into the beam of light, and the terrifying Ryatsu even distorted the space. Neutra looked crazy, vigorously urging this Cero. The distance between him and Shendu is shorter than before. This monster would never guess that he still has the energy to explode a new round of Cero. This time, he must be able to kill this monster. Facing the violent attack of Cero, the surrounding air was even directly squeezed to nothingness. Shendu still had that calm expression, probably influenced by Holy Bell, as if everything in front of him couldn't make any waves in his heart. Everyone is false. Could it be that you think Vasto Lord Wang Su's Cero is not as good as a juches? He stretched out his claws. The golden red light intertwined and twisted in the palm, and the surging Ryatsu burst out at the last moment. The spirits frantically converged into one body, forming a dazzling golden red light. Boom! The terrifying Cero erupted, and the flowing magma surrounded the beam of light, spiraling and twisting towards the front. The extremely high temperature evaporated the moisture in the air, and even the space was distorted accordingly. The moment when the two Cero collided and staggered in the air, Neutra's eyes widened, pupils narrowed to ultimate. The golden Cero is like snow under the scorching sun, fading away at a speed visible to the naked eye. But in an instant, only the terrifying Cero intertwined with gold and red remained in the field, accompanied by the high temperature of ultimate, devouring everything in front of him. Neutra's eyes reflected a golden red color, and they were finally occupied by endless despair. The gap, like a natural moat, cannot be made up at all. Even if he tried his best, he would never be a match for the monster in front of him. However, at the moment when it was about to be swallowed by Cero, the golden red Cero flickered and turned into countless spiritual particles, completely dissipating in the air. It's as if the power is exhausted. Before Neutra could rejoice, he was covered by shadows. Remember what I said earlier? Blood-red eyes looked straight into Neutra's eyes. I don't like subordinates who are like mad dogs. There was a trace of teasing in Shindu's eyes. Sorry, I haven't changed my mind. The little joy that had risen in my heart was once again swallowed by more cruel despair. Neutra looked crazy, like a dying beast, ready to fight back at any time. Stimulated by this mentality, the flesh and blood near his chest grew in large numbers. At this moment, he was closer to Vasto Lord. Shindu didn't give him a chance anymore. He stretched out his claws, pinched Neutra's head directly, and lifted it up in the air. The two looked at each other. Neutra saw the playfulness and disdain in Shindu's eyes. This look magnified the shame in his heart to ultimate. The golden Ryatsu physically surrounded him, burning like a flame. What a wonderful scene. Shindu was surprised. It's really going to evolve to Vasto Lord. But although I like fighting, I prefer to give the enemy the deepest and most helpless despair. After the words fell, Neutra's crazily expression froze suddenly. The power of the sheep spell is activated. The transparent soul belonging to Neutra was drawn directly from the top of the head. Chapter 41. Sorry, I am the real protagonist template. Boom. Neutra fell from Shindu's palm, half kneeling on the scorched sand. He looked up at the sky. No color could be seen in his black pupils. His mouth was slightly opened, as deep as an abyss. The burning golden Ryatsu diminished little by little until it was completely extinguished, like a dying candle in the wind. Shindu looked at the soul pulled in the palm, carefully observed and analyzed. The power of the sheep charm has far more potential than he imagined. This soul-specific ability alone is enough to rank among the many bug-level abilities in this treacherous otherworld. Soul! Shindu hesitated for a moment, then directly opened his bloody mouth under Hurley Bell's shocked gaze, directly devouring Neutra's soul completely. The golden light flickered in Shindu's blood-red eyes, and then he calmed down. Nothing changed, not even a wave of Ryatsu. However, Shindu's expression rarely showed a hint of joy and indeed. Killing and soul. He summed it up simply. Want to own Aaronkar, except for the long time and near limitless potential. Killing is also one of the essential conditions. The second is the strength of the soul. Thinking about the soul strength of Stark, even in the entire Hueco Mundo, it is considered outstanding. With the complete disappearance of the soul, Neutra, who was half kneeling on the ground, completely lost its support and turned into countless spirits, blending into the air of Hueco Mundo. The sixth step towards the ultimate has been completed. Template progress 35% to 40%. Unlock the snake charm. Current abilities: dragon body, fire magic, demon magic, dragon charm, pig charm, cow charm, sheep charm, snake charm. Ryatsu, first class Lingwei, extreme. With the demise of Neutra, one step closer to the ultimate. It's just that the unlocking of the snake charm made Shindu a little dissatisfied. Simply hiding the breath doesn't seem to have much effect in the battle. He prefers the kind of straightforward battles. Violent crushing is the romance of Minos Grande. As for the Neutra spirit submerging into the air of Hueco Mundo, Shindu is naturally aware of this. Thoughtfully, if even the soul is devoured, will Neutra still appear in hell? If it really appeared, then the essence of life is not the soul, but the spirit. Regarding this speculation, he did not delve into it. The harvest of this trip has already made him very satisfied. One day, the secret of hell will also be presented to him. Shindu believes that this day is not too far away. Come on, Hurley Bell. Hearing Shindu calling his name suddenly, Hurley Bell hesitated for a moment, but followed immediately. Although she very much rejects the behavior of devouring evolution between Minos Grande. But as Vasto Lord, no one can avoid this process. As long as Shindu doesn't force himself to do this kind of thing, it will be fine. The forest of Minos Grande. When Shindu returned, Santos was waiting outside the White Tower on time. He reported the current situation respectfully, as well as a small amount of information that needed attention. Santos will not have the slightest doubt that Shindu can solve the problem of the disappearance of the Ajucha's expedition team. He is even more confident than Shindu himself. Your Majesty, the other expedition teams have all returned smoothly, and a new expedition team has been dispatched to the southwest again. Santos took out a notebook from under the messy feathers and reported respectfully. Besides, there is another piece of information that His Majesty needs to give orders. In the direction of Xia Palace, there is a large-scale migration of virtual groups. Shendu's teeth are slightly opened, and white air escapes from them. Even the most kind smile is enough to stop a child from crying at night. Have you finally started to move? Virtual group migration. It means that the war between Void Palace and Minos Grande Forest is about to start. Berrigan will never allow an equal to him to be born in Hueco Mundo, let alone be replaced by other Vasto lords. In his eyes, he is the only supreme being, the only god in Hueco Mundo. On the day Hurley Bell issued the gauntlet, Berrigan's orders were conveyed layer by layer. The virtual groups belonging to the Shuya Palace moved towards the direction of the Shuya Palace one after another. An unprecedented war is about to break out in Hueco Mundo. But everyone knows it. Even Jillian, who has an individual consciousness, knows it very well. What dominates the direction of this war is by no means the number of virtual groups on either side, nor the quality of their respective ajuches. It is a battle between the masters of the two forces. Only the truly strong are worthy to sit on the throne of the king of Hueco Mundo. But even knowing this, restlessness is still spreading in Shuya Palace. For the coming war, these tyrannical guys are both eager and fearful. There is no living thing that does not fear death. The same goes for Minos Grande. In Shuya Palace, above the open-air castle, the bright white moonlight sprinkled on the empty square like flowing water. The dense Minos Grande swarmed among them, kneeling quietly on the ground, waiting for new orders. Berrigan sat on the throne, his bony arms propped up his thin cheeks, looking down at the ajuches. At this moment, he was inexplicably irritable. In other words, as early as when Hurley Bell came to issue the gauntlet, Berrigan's mentality had some subtle changes. Previously, he had disdain for Shendu, the new Vasto Lord. He thought that this little guy might bring a little change to his boring life. But whoever thought? Within a few days, Shendu first beheaded Vasto Lord of the same level in the forest of Minos Grande, and then beheaded all the troops he sent out. The only Vasto Lord under his command even chose to betray and switch to the enemy camp. Even more outrageous, Hurley Bell, who Berrigan himself invited many times but failed, also joined Shendu's camp and stood on the opposite side. Such a comparison. Berrigan suddenly realized that he, the so-called king of Hueco Mundo, seemed to be a joke. Anger accumulated in his heart, almost completely burning the rationality he had accumulated over the years. If there were no other subordinates, he might have killed himself in the forest of Minos Grande at this time. Gio, how's the virtual group gathering going? Berrigan asked in a low voice. Gio Wag knelt down and reported in a respectful manner. Except for a small number of 2 virtual groups, the others have gathered near the Shuya Palace. Gio Wag is one of Berrigan's most trusted Minos Grandes. He has a saber-toothed tiger-like skull mask. His whole body is covered with white bone armor, and sharp knives are borne at the joints of his limbs like a killing machine. Because of Abalama Alita's death, Gio Wag took his place and was responsible for handling many tedious matters in the Void Knight Palace. However, these subordinates of Berrigan, the Minos Grande, are very happy with this. There is no need to wait any longer. I can't wait. Berrigan lowered the arm supporting his head and pressed his hands on the armrest of the throne. The black breath surrounded it, and the terrifying Ryatsu spread to the entire Shuya Palace at this moment. All set out. Target, the forest of Minos Grande. Chapter 42, Declare War on Shuya Palace. A deafening roar, like a continuous thunder, echoed their Berrigan lord. Sukun vented the tyranny deep in his heart in his own way. Following Berrigan's order, the mighty Void group set off towards the forest of Minos Grande, stirring up dust and sand along the way, covering the moonlight in the sky. This will be an unprecedented Hueco Mundo war. The forest of Minos Grande. After Santos reported the relevant information, Shendu immediately ordered to mobilize in the forest of Minos Grande. Jillian and the Ajuchas woke up from their lairs and gathered outside the forest of Minos Grande. After unifying the forest of Minos Grande, Shendu opened up new entrances and exit from the edge to facilitate the entry and exit of virtual groups. At the same time, it is also for the war with Shuya Palace in the near future. What's the point of a simple battle between kings and kings? It's like two children competing for a toy. Whoever wins the toy will own it. Nothing like the king of the Hueco Mundo should be. Only war, in the true sense, can demonstrate the hard-won status of this position. At this point, Berrigan and Shendu coincide. Inside the White Tower, Shendu stepped into it, and all kinds of test tubes and unknown body tissues greeted his eyes. Minos Grande's Shinigamis. There are even separate organs for Kuratsuchi Mayuri and Sailaporo. Once these two crazy guys were put into research experiments, they didn't care about the feelings of others and themselves. Everything is to find the truth. A simple soul breakthrough is definitely not enough. At some point, the mask on Kuratsuchi Mayuri's face was broken, revealing the skin of a normal person, but the occasional suture line showed that he was definitely not a normal person. Sailaporo is also unkempt, not at all elegant at first. According to the information provided by His Majesty, killing is also an essential part. But the key to Arankar is Minos Grande's ability to master Shinigami. Perhaps there is an unknown secret between the Ryatsu and Lingzi of the two. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's smile grew wilder, her golden teeth gleaming under the light. Even if you dissect your body 36 times, the result is the same, no difference from normal Minos Grande. It's just the Ryatsu layers compressed and fused. Sailaporo hesitated and tentatively asked, is it possible to analyze the wavelength and frequency density of the spirit? With the current equipment, it may be difficult. As Captain Shinigami, as Vasto Lord, the two guys didn't even notice Shendu's approach. Even Shendu didn't hide his Ryatsu. Your Majesty, Shendu. Out of the corner of Kuratsuchi Mayuri's gaze, she spotted Shendu. No way. If it is not discovered, the burly shadow will almost cover the entire laboratory. Let's come to an end for the experimental research. The magnetic magic sound echoed in the room, forming even weirder echoes. Shendu stepped in front of the two, reflecting their puzzlement with a mysterious smile. First, let's witness an analysis of experimental data. By the way, in a war, even the wisdom of Kuratsuchi Mayuri and Sailaporo belong to the best of their respective groups, but they still don't understand the meaning of Shendu's words. However, due to their identities and contracts, they cannot violate any of Shendu's wishes, even if this order will stop their pursuit and exploration of truth. Outside the forest of Minos Grande, on the endless desert, Hurley Bell was here early on, sorting out the void group belonging to the forest of Minos Grande. All kinds of monsters crawled under her Ryatsu, not even daring to raise their heads. Sometimes, Vasto Lord's Ryatsu is often able to overwhelm most of the lower Minos Grande. Dense black shadows cover Hueco Mundo like huge waves in the ocean. The even more terrifying Ryatsu spread in the forest of Minos Grande, covering all the void groups in an instant, covering their hearts as if the sky was falling. Suffocating, their bodies trembled as if they were sifting chaff, trembling endlessly. Facing Shendu, who has nothing to hide, the fear deep in Shuchuan's heart is gradually replaced by fanaticism. The worship of the strong has been deeply engraved in the depths of their souls. If the distance is close enough, it is enough to see the demonic sheep's head mark in the pupils of these Minos Grande. The soul power of the sheep's spell, amplified with demonic magic to induce the tiniest belief in the depths of its soul, making it Shendu. For the application of this ability, Shendu refers to the application method of a certain usury ancestor. However, the results of the two are not the same. Shendu is just to increase the loyalty of the virtual group to an infinite degree, so as to prevent some unnecessary contradictions. And Uabak uses the ability to distribute the soul to improve his own strength. In comparison, it seems that Uabaka's ability is better. But in fact, it's just because Shendu doesn't like this long and cumbersome way. That 1,000 years of time alone was enough to consume all his patience. The virtual group is about to set off. There was still silence in the venue. There were no pre-war proclamations, much less inspiring speeches. Shendu is also not good at these empty-headed things. All he has to do is prepare to face the king of Hueco Mundo. Set off. The magnetic magic sound seemed small, but it was accurately transmitted to every Su's ears. Like a well-trained army, they arranged in a neat formation and marched towards the Shiya Palace. Compared with the virtual group in the virtual Night Palace, it's completely regular army and hooligans, not on the same level at all. And this is just the result of Shendu during this period of time. Suffice it to say that during his endless years as the king of the Hueco Mundo, Berrigan has been doing nothing but laying low. However, since he has no external threats, it is understandable. Born in sorrow, died in peace. Probably this is the reason. Su-kun set off in the direction of Su-yi Palace neatly. Amidst the majestic momentum, dust and sand rose up all over the sky, like a rolling wave, trying to swallow everything in front of it. Although Hurley Bell and Sayo Laporo were shocked by the scene in front of them, they were still within the acceptable range. The only one who feels that the three views have collapsed is Kuratsuchi Mayuri. He drilled his temples hard with his joints, and his mouth almost reached the base of his ears, letting out a crazy laugh. The tyrannical and cruel Minos Grande can also be trained to this level. Our Majesty Shendu is really terrifying. I really want to see what expressions other colleagues will show when they see this scene. It's really exciting. Chapter 43, after the meat grinder, there will be a duel between kings on the barren Hueco Mundo. The white sand rolls up, blowing the wind and screaming. Thick clouds piled up in the sky, covering the only moonlight, making the already cold and dark desert appear more profound and quiet. Two black shadows, like sea tides, are gradually approaching. The rumbling pace of marching, like the neighing of thunder, vibrates in the sky. One side is silent, the other side is noisy. The two armies faced each other, and the momentum was boiling. Demonstration-like roars came from a distance, deafening. Shendu stood above the sky, looking at the boundless and huge black shadow, as if he wanted to tear everything apart. In terms of superficial momentum alone, the side of Shiya Palace seems to be more terrifying and mighty. But if you compare them carefully, you will find that those Minos Grande, who are constantly relying on ferocious roars, have more than half of fear in their eyes that should be full of tyranny. On the other hand, Minos Grande Forest is too quiet, only the sound of continuous breathing. But in the eyes of these Minos Grande, there is only endless fanaticism. It's really spectacular. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's eyes lit up, a war scene I've never seen before. Even if Shinigami and Su fight, there will never be such an impressive sight in front of us. In terms of quantity alone, Shinigami is far inferior to Su. Even a single Ajuchas outnumber Shinigami by far. If it wasn't for cannibalism and internal strife, Hueco Mundo's territory would have expanded into the Soul Society long ago. It might be even more spectacular next time. Sailaporo spoke up. War in the true sense is really exciting. Although the two have disagreements in philosophy, they have been together day and night for a period of time, and it feels a bit like rejoicing with friends. Shendu did not take up the conversation between the two, but looked into the distance. In the sky above the empty group on the opposite side, the throne is suspended under the clouds, and an arrogant figure sits on it. Beside the throne, several beast-shaped Minos Grande of different shapes hovered around. Their whole bodies are wrapped in bone armor, and the wild Ryatsu is almost solidified. In terms of momentum alone, none of them is weaker than Cortez under Shendu. Facing countless enemies of Minos Grande, Cortez mingled in the crowd, scratching his hooves excitedly, wishing he could plunge headfirst into the enemy camp and fight to his heart's content. When Shendu noticed Berrigan, the other party also noticed him. Berrigan sat upright on the throne. His slender, bony fingers manipulated the black breath of death, circling up and down the throne. Shendu, Berrigan, The two looked at each other from a distance, and at the same time meditated silently in their hearts. Let's start. Without further hesitation, Berrigan commanded Minos Grande at his side. Geo Wag immediately fell from the sky and came before the Void group, making a deafening roar that almost overwhelmed the roar of all other Minos Grande demonstrations. Advance, let's go to war. Tear them apart. The virtual group responded, and the roaring sound even condensed in its substance, almost breaking away the thick dark cloud on the zenith. Hurley Bell, also in the capacity of commander, came to the front of his own virtual group and gave the order to attack. Go to war. The calm water voice has nothing to do with the atmosphere on the battlefield, but it was such a sound that directly overwhelmed the roaring and roaring of the countless Minos Grande of the enemy. The moment the two sides handed over, the desolate desert turned into a meat grinder, and the blood-red smell permeated the battlefield that erupted in an instant of dead silence. Howling and roaring, Cero's red and flickering black shadows bloomed in the wind. But momentarily, the piled-up remains, the bloody river, are hideous and terrifying. This is a short but heroic war. In a short period of time, Berrigan's expression changed from arrogant to gloomy, like the thick cumulus clouds in the sky, which might thunder and lightning at any time. Although he had expected failure, such a tragic scene still made him lose face. One's own army was almost wiped out, and the opponent's loss did not exceed 30%. Such a degree of comparison already explains everything. Although in this short war, Hurley Bell's credit accounted for nearly half. However, several Ajuchas with strong fighting power that he valued were also lost in it. Never mind. Berrigan stood up on the throne. Just kill that little guy and everything will calm down, whether it's war or arrogance. It's all but embellishment for death. Shendu also broke away from the current camp, stepped on the sky, and looked directly at Berrigan not far away. King of the Hueco Mundo, Berrigan Lizenbairn. He opened the gap between his teeth lightly, and the white aura escaped from them, and the tyrannical aura rushed towards his face. You've been in this position for too long. It's time to hand it over. With deep eyes, Berrigan let out a very disdainful laugh. Humble and ignorant fellow, I was originally born in Hueco Mundo, and through countless years, I have witnessed countless challengers. The best of them even completely surpass you. He stretched out his bone finger, and circles of black breath rippled on it, like ripples in a lake. But what about their results? Embracing death one by one, going to perish. Your fate is the same. The voice fell. Heavy Ryatsu erupted from around Berrigan, forming a violent storm that instantly tore apart the thick clouds above the sky. Corresponding, the direction...
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.